ends during the intro, then I will get you guys in and ready to go when we are ready.
We are live.
Okay.
You are experiencing an Echoes of New Eden production.
New Eden. A galaxy made up of salt, broken relationships, and the $10 scam. A galaxy where you can get a happy ending, but only if you pay a little extra. A galaxy home to a podcast greater than the Catskill Academy, Trekcast, and Echoes from the Front combined. Live on Discord, it's the Echoes of New Eden podcast. We bring you the finest in little-known facts from around the galaxy since 2020. If it's almost news, we'll cover it. And welcome everybody to Echoes of New Eden podcast. I am your host, Rembo, for today, and we got Taylor Rick with us, as well as OC Can't Stop. What's going on, guys?
Another week.
Hey, man.
It's going good.
Another week has gone by. Yes, that's the notorious phrase that we like to say. Another week has gone by. And another big week it has been. So, as everybody knows, this is a special EU edition episode. We are excited to provide you guys a different audience, I guess you could say, a different time to be able to join us in participating and just joining and listening to the show. So it's great to be here as usual, and I am excited for the show we are about to have. As last week we had talked about, we were hyping it up a little bit as to what we had in store for you today, and I'll just get right into it, right? So last weekend we had celebrated the 1 year of the server war, as you could say, Razzle Dazzle versus everybody else, whatever their current name is, right? Currently it's Pact 2023, so that has been ongoing as well. So we just celebrated that 1 year kind of anniversary of that war. So what's that mean? We got some special guests today, and we are going to talk about the 1 year anniversary of the war. Everything from, I guess, a year ago, from the start of it to today, what happened yesterday even, right? So our guests are in the audience, and so I'm going to start unmuting them. And right now we got MJD. He should be joining here. I did allow him. We also have Doro. Let me invite him to speak. He didn't raise his hand. There we go. Got Doro in there, as well as Run. Now I gotta find him. Here he is. Invite to speak. So those are our special guests with us today, and in my defense, I did try inviting other people, and they did decline in participating in today's event. So that's perfectly fine. They didn't want to come on and talk about it. Either it's because they didn't want to, or they aren't playing at the capacity that they were last time. So I welcome our guests, MJD, Doro, and Run. So you guys do a quick mic check and everything, make sure everything works, and how y'all been?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, good to be here, Rambo. Thanks for the invite.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining today. And it's been a while since I've had a couple of you guys on the show. Doro's probably been the most recent. Run it's been a long time since we've had you on the show. I know you've been on it, though I cannot give a time frame as to when. I think heck, it was even before Taylor even joined the
That seems right.
podcast. So it's been 2 years at least since you've been on. So welcome back. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's probably when Tahini probably jumped with him at some point to talk about whatever war we were doing back in the day. But yeah, back here 2 years after, I guess. Let's go get it.
Cool. And Taylor, do I have to adjust some volumes because on my end he seems to be really low.
Yeah, I just adjusted him up. If I hear anybody else's low, I'll adjust him too.
Okay.
I have him at like 200%. I don't know what's going on with this mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mic for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm 200 as well.
Spanish
Okay.
siesta time right now, so he's trying not to wake up the house.
All good. All good. So let's just jump right into it. Today we're going to do a little bit of a different show layout, like I had explained to our hosts prior to the show, in the mic check time that we do, as we're going to talk about this war first thing, and have a discussion as to how the year went. I want to talk about the ups, the downs, how it all started, major wins, major losses, things that changed the war as far as like motivation and tactics and that type of stuff that happened all throughout this last year. So I got some of the biggest names that I could invite, including Taylor. Taylor is part of all of this as well, so he can provide some insight, let's say, as to how everything
debatable.
had gone down. That's debatable, true. MJD will debate that probably. So
Oh, you think?
Taylor is a valuable member of the leadership team.
that's awesome. And we have a huge audience tonight, so thank you everybody for joining this episode today. So we appreciate your attendance. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about this war. SHH, well, I would say SHH, but it's more than that. It's Razzle Dazzle versus Pac-23 in its beginning. And this, I suppose I'll turn to Run here, because you were part of No Please Stop originally when the war was started. So tell us about how and why this all came about into the server's biggest war in the last year.
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting story, and I'll provide a bit of context. So, Tahini, well, I know at that point of the game, we kind of had basically, it's going to sound cocky as fuck, but we had beaten pretty much every single alliance in the game at that stage. And really, like, it got stale, it got boring, we didn't know what else to do. Like, we had just finished a war where we fought with Blur against Void, and we were, we literally could have killed Void very easily.
I wish you
but
would
we
have.
I've had people say that to me. I'm like, Run, why did you stop that from happening? I said, like, because it didn't give you a purpose to fight today. If they would have died before, you wouldn't have a purpose today. So, and they're like,
Well,
oh yes, thank you.
We all know that it was because Benzie couldn't make content out of his Citadel that was taking.
Look, man,
we know
I
this.
I know. There's a lot of
Stole the hat back.
Uh-huh.
Beating the dead horse there.
Look, Benzie can get a lot of grilling, but one thing that to me he gained a massive respect is that he indeed sent his hat to Tahini, and yeah, massive. He gained my respect for that. It's like a token of ending the war, which was pretty fun. But yeah, so going back to quickly, I'm going to try and keep it short, right? But so we had that war, and but the game came still, like, there was no alliances were willing to commit capitals, like, and that was kind of like the fun toy at the time. So yeah, so basically, I stepped to the side a little bit, and Colt came back to the game, and Tahini and Colt basically wanted to, I would say, ignite the fire in Union again, because it was getting stale and boring. And they basically were not pushing, but interested in getting a fight against Shush, right? Which we had previously been allied with in two major wars. First against Pantheon, Pantheon and all the friends of those, like Genesis, Katrina 2, etc. And then obviously Gen, right? So that those two wars happened, and obviously in this case it was like, okay, so Shush is the next big target, right? So so that was kind of like the focus. And you know, in their attempt, we had just allied with Burr, so of course Tahini and the rest of No leadership kind of teamed up with them on going against Silent. And well, then you know, it's a long story of what developed there, because kind of I think Burr took a bit of the lead on bringing allies to that sort of coalition. And TSC was there, then OG came and Void came. And all throughout when that was happening, I actually got invited to a group chat, which was at the very beginning of the preparation of that war, by a group of those people, and they invited me as a member of No. And I said to them, I saw the group chat, I know exactly what they wanted to do, and I just got in the group chat and I said, basically, look guys, I'm not going on a war against Shush. Shush, I know you guys don't like them, I know they might be quite big relatively, because the rest of the alliances we nuked, so relatively Shush was the biggest at the time, and that was completely correct. But you know, I said, right now Shush is not planning on expanding any further. That to me is no concern. I said, the war we should be fighting is against AOA. And you have to take into account that AOA at the time was 2 regions, all right? 2 regions because we stopped them from being a 3rd region, because we had just helped OG and Void, you know, not long before, prevent the expansion of AOA into Detroit. So I might be going a bit too long on this story, but I think it deserves a bit of the context and the nuance, right?
It does.
I think it deserved it. So you know, so AOA, we, you know, in No, one thing we were very proud about is our level of intelligence in enemy alliances, neutral, blues, whatever, at very high levels, at every level actually. So naturally we had, and we were fighting AOA for a long time. The Executive Corporation, ZRQ, which is at the time a very good pirate corporation, had effectively done a significant damage to No Alliance at the time. But, you know, so normally we tracked every step of what they did since then. And it came to show that essentially we you know, at a very high leadership level, we were reading what their plans were, right? The plan wasn't to stay a 2-region alliance and, you know, rat peacefully. It was to expand with a very like nationalistic point of view. Some would consider that racist. I certainly would, according to some of the stuff I was reading. And, you know, the intent was at all times to implement a doctrine that would allow them to bot heavily and really use those resources to then convert those, you know, that ISK into renminbi or Chinese yuan, you know, and basically RMT it. If anyone has played any MMO at a large scale, this is no news to you. It's very common. I don't blame it as a cultural thing, but it's just normal. It's normal in MMOs that this happens. And to no surprise, the biggest Chinese alliance wanted to expand and achieve the same as they've achieved in many other MMOs, right? But at a larger and larger scale. So for me, I said to everyone in that group that invited me, I said, you are picking the wrong target, and you either understand this now and you amend this, or you'll regret it in the future. And I promptly said, like, I'm not partaking in this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hunt and harass every single one of your fleets because you guys are just fucking blobbing this, right? And I left the group. So that's my partaking story. And Tahini and I kind of split up from there. And I actually harassed his fleets. And CRB left No. And then No was like in a point of like, okay, we're in a bit of a weird spot. I mean, there's a lot of conjecture and speculation whether it was all a stunt to just create a massive server war. I leave that one to interpretation. But yeah, that's a bit of the status of the formation and my partake in No. So I personally wasn't actually involved. I was doing a lot of damage, and I was just trying to avoid that because I saw the incoming Zerg, and especially as I saw more and more alliances turn into piling onto Shush, which again, never forget, this was 80% of the map against 15% of the map or 10% of the map, however you want to place it. Again, those percentages change at different times, but I certainly, as a person who likes to fight outnumbered, this certainly wasn't appealing to me. So I can't speak on behalf of No, and I won't speak on behalf of Tahini or Colt, who orchestrated that. I wasn't part of it, but I think it's important to provide a bit of the nuance of how all that happened, because then obviously it embarked in what we have seen as the biggest server war to date, which, to some degree has been fun and epic and has had a lot of highs and lows, I guess, for both sides. And on one side, I can say is that it's been fun. Like there's been a lot of good, fun moments, and I think that's what makes this game special. We can never forget that. Anyway, enough of my TED talk.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
You're good. And Doro, were you part of the talks that, some of the first talks that had happened when Burr and No, as well as all the other entities, were coming together to face Razzle Dazzle?
Actually, no, I wasn't. I believe that was exactly in a couple of months I took off of the game back in the day. So I came back after that, and I was there before, but that was exactly the part I was.
Okay, I missed the tail end of what he'd said there, but I think Ozir was kind of the spearhead for Burr when that was coming about, when the formation was having. And I tried getting Ozir on the show today. He did decline to partake in it, so that's perfectly fine. And so MJD, what's your stance on the beginnings of the war and No, Please Stop, along with Burr, forming this coalition against SHH? What was SHH thinking?
So at the time, I was actually on a break from the game. My characters were all 3 days away from being deleted permanently.
Missed it by that much.
I know, 3 days. Had they just delayed
Yeah.
72 hours, this war would have been significantly easier for them. I mean, I can tell you exactly what happened. We were kind of monitoring it. I still kept my fingers to the pulse of the game, so I knew the war was coming. I just didn't realize that they would be so, in my personal opinion, cowardly in terms of how big of a coalition they would form against Shush. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I was totally fine with the idea of Burr and No going toe-to-toe with Shush. I probably never would have come back, let the characters go, and continued having a blast in EVE Online. But I don't like bullies. So Pei and I sat down in a meeting, and we kind of laid out how we thought this war was going to go. And I think the first conversation we had was, if we can survive the first 30 days, we're going to win the war. And generally, because those first 30 days is when you have the highest morale as an attacking force, that's when attrition isn't really something you're going to be dealing with. I knew that when it boiled down to it, we have essentially unlimited resources, and based on the spies that we had in the organizations that were going to be attacking us, we knew they were going to take the long way around rather than just punching straight for the heart of the Federation. Which was going to be a big mistake. So I knew if we could play for time, if we could survive that initial, let's call it barrage from those players, we were going to be fine. And I think Run said it very accurately. There's been a lot of good highs and a lot of low lows. We definitely stress test the SRP program of Shush because of Anansi Blacks, but that's what makes a war interesting.
Yeah.
And what it boiled down to is, luckily, good people who I don't want to say moved on from the organization, but had decided to part ways, came back. A lot of the FC teams and people like Joda stepped up in a big way. Joda's Scepter fleets, I can't tell you how good they were for morale. I don't care what entity you are. If you're getting torn apart every time you're trying to go 20 jumps, you're going to have a bad time. And then we had the VFK thing, which was actually really nice, even though like everyone's like, oh, you didn't camp it 24/7. Well, that wasn't the goal. The goal was just morale is everything in a war. I think it was Napoleon who has the famous quote in regards to morale. And it's just, I can't tell you how important it was to dictate and essentially bring all the vitriol and hate onto myself at the beginning of this war so that my guys could focus on the important thing, which is just killing and having fun. So, that's just kind of how it started for us. Came back and got to work.
Indeed, we did. And so the coalitions were formed. Razzle Dazzle 2 versus Crabco, they had deemed themselves. And so it basically started late November, or I like to say just December 1st is when it started. So,
Our
could have been
official
a day
start
before.
date is November 28th.
Okay, so the end of the month.
The
there.
fleets were
So,
moving up the week of Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So we saw fleets moving up on both sides, one coming up towards Tenal, one coming up via Pureblind, or at least stationed outside of Pureblind anyway, cat fleets that we watched move at one point 400 in one fleet, moving up towards
Yeah,
Tenal.
it's
The numbers were
it's kind of one of those things. It's one of those things where you notice it's like, oh crap, war is coming.
Yeah.
War is coming. Like it's at our doorstep, you know. And so preparations are happening, right? And then we get into December, and I was listening back to previous episodes of like, oh okay, bring it. I guess war's happening. Cool, this is gonna be fun. And we started talking about it and started talking about numbers and you know the kill ISK positive, you know, negative type ratio that the MobiBot was keeping track of at the time, where we had the space teams. And you know, we would look at those every week and say, oh okay, well Razzle Dazzle is 500 million ahead at that time, and you know that time. And then it just goes on and on and on. Like we were covering stats for POS kills and all that type of stuff. So December being the first month was quite intense as far as activities happening, and it definitely brought war to the doorstep of SHH in decline. So some of the first things that I remember of that was one, at the preparations, and then two, Hellcamp VFK.
Hellcamp was later, though. VFK Hellcamp didn't happen until sometime in January, because during the month of December,
It
we
was a
were
little bit
fighting
later.
constantly on trying to keep armor timers going into whole timers, and then, of course, by the 12th, I have multiple war reports that I did for Zen at the time, every day, until basically JD completely stepped in for that role. But I was doing them there almost every day, and then I have a note here that on the 11th. No, not the 11th. I'm sorry. No, this is the first one. Two major CTAs. Motorella had one. I had one. I was on defense. He was on offense. We were trying to do a little bit of both. But then on that later that night, that's when we lost our first set of holes and saved another set of holes. So we had 9 to protect on that first night. That was their first hole timers. Was 12 of 2022, according to my notes.
So it was about a weekend, maybe 2 weeks at the most. No had declared that they were disbanding. So that definitely changed the push of the war. Run, if you can comment on that.
So can you quickly can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, about no disbanding and how that changed the push that CC had, the momentum that they had.
Yeah, I can explain it. So in the onset of this war, a number of groups reached out to know, asking basically if we take a contract to war Shush, right? And I think Tahini said, yeah, sure, for 1 trillion ISK, right? And all these alliances hated the guts of Shush, but at the same time, collectively, they couldn't amass that sort of money, right? So I don't know how I ended up with what I explained before, right? The story of, you know, at the end of the day, it's like for boredom that war started, and just to spice things up and to spark a fire in the map. And, you know, I think that was quite successful. But the disbanding of No, as I said before, was Corps started to see that basically, No in its core level is an aggregation of pirate corps that started early on in the game, right? Pure pirate corps with no sovereignty. It's quite important to understand. Nothing pirate corp hurts, or a PvPer generally hates more than blues. At that stage, the corps of No had like 80% of the map blue, so they were disgusted. So they're like, you know, slowly corps started saying like, what the hell is this? You know, as the Crab Coalition amassed more and more numbers, you know, these corps were slowly, you know, to the point at which they were leaving, right? At which point there was this internal conflict over it. There were you know, as a grand finale to sparking this light fire in New Eden, it was like, okay, at the end of the day, really, the purpose of No was never to create an empire. It was rather just to create a, I would say, highly competent military force in the entire map, and from a mercenary standpoint, quite intending to kind of copy slightly the model of Pandemic Legion and EVE Online. So at the end of the day, like, we achieved all the objectives we really wanted. So it was more of like, leave when you've got the chips on the table kind of thing, like, and at that point it was like no one had really inflicted any damage of no, and no left a really high note in terms of, what we had achieved. And and of course a lot of people were then like sad about us disbanding, but sometimes like nothing's going to last forever and might as well disband when you're on a high note kind of thing. So kind of that's how it developed. And another point to answer your question was that you have to take into account that many of these corporate alliances that formed the Crab Coalition relied entirely on the militaristic prowess of No for an edge, or to compete at the level we had to compete in order to. No had to compete in order to fight. Crab Coalition had to fight Shush, right? For free, right? It was really ridiculous from my standpoint, because obviously we were AmeriCorp, right? Why would we fight their war for them and had to lead it for free? Like, that just, to me, it was absolutely ridiculous. And that's it. Like, at the end of the day, I think Colt did an announcement when No abandoned Crab Coalition and promptly disbanded, saying, "Hey guys, I know you all wanted No to lead the charge for you, but it's reality. It's down to you." Right? And a lot of these alliances, and you guys will know which ones, joined hoping that the work would be done for them, right? Not that they'd have to put in the work. And I guess they received quite a pleasant surprise, from what I understood in the chats of these of the Crab Coalition once No abandoned, right? The expectations were, No was going to do the work, and then it's like, oh shit, this is on me now. I thought I was just jumping into a quick Zerg and we'd just eliminate Shush and make them disband in like 30 days. But fuck, I have got to do it now myself. And of course, that had some knock-on effects after it as well.
None of those people knew how to do that.
Well, no, because certain groups I think were better prepared militaristically. I would say for sure. I can throw a lot of criticism, mockery, and I can grill the living shit out of Burr. But I would say, like, Duros and Comms, Burr was probably the best prepared alliance for such an attack out of every other alliance, just because they had a kind of a higher percentage tendency to PvP versus the rest of the other alliances, which are just, I would consider as being 99.9% PvE focused alliances, right?
I think the only ones that I'd consider more qualified would have been Meow at the time.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, that's entirely correct. Yes, Meow, actually. I would say the number one, Michael JD can probably he can probably see it, but Meow for sure was probably, in my eyes, the most effective force in the entire war over any other alliance. I completely missed that. Yes.
Wasn't that Yes at the time, or it wasn't Meow at that time? Meow didn't
Yes
form until later.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the first 2 months, and then VLT and what was it? Boop merged together.
Boop, yeah. Into Meow, that was like February, maybe, somewhere in there, late January.
Yeah, and those guys were super, super effective in what they were doing. It's true.
Very effective.
Yeah.
They were a bitch to clear out of Pureblind. They ended up putting up a ANSI network gate to get up into Declan long after we had gone and moved on to try to do the next stage of the war, and they were a bitch to get out of there too. Meow was.
Right.
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
I was gonna kind of move on out of December into the timeline as to how this war went throughout the year. So we could say December had its ups and downs. Definitely, it had the war front brought to SHH. We had all these corporations and alliances participated in this, and the numbers were stacking. I forget what the numbers were of the space team at the time, but it was SHH and their allies versus basically what it came down to, about 80% of the rest of null space, basically. So,
guys, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Remember?
Yes.
Nice.
Quick question to run. Well, I've heard how you portrayed the creation of the Crab Coalition. Yet, I'm aware of how the talks went between Mel and Tahini. So that doesn't really sound like what was originally planned, because listening to you, it sounded like everybody had to rely on No to be the spearhead of the operation, so to speak. Whilst realistically, I very particularly remember conversations between Mel and Tahini on, let's say, strategy and overall planning of the war before No kind of tapped out. So I don't necessarily think.
I think you're misunderstanding what he's saying, what the talks were versus what actually occurred. I think you're misunderstanding the fact that most of the entities, and again, he said outside of Burr, really wanted to ride coattails and just blob up.
Yeah, for sure. Just to be more accurate, Doro, yes, indeed, it was not just. I'm saying in reference to No leaving, right, and disbanding. Like a lot of these groups counted on No to be the spearhead, right? But alongside Burr, and it was mainly Burr and No who created that war for sure. So yeah, in terms of being more accurate, I'm not the sort of person to not be accurate with this. Yes, indeed, it was Burr and No at the same time that kind of pushed this, right?
Yeah, and to clarify, it was Melodious in the beginning, not Osier. Osier didn't come into play until January, February.
Run, could you please repeat what you just said, because I kind of lagged out. I understood exactly nothing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My connection is kind of messed up today. I don't know what's going on.
So it's a good time to roam Burr space, is what you're saying.
What? Well, you're welcome. Do you know where it is? It's not that hard to find.
I do know where it is, yeah.
I'll repeat, Dora. So what I was saying, I hope it doesn't lag again, but what I was saying, following kind of what JD said, is that I was speaking about on reference to the consequences of No disbanding, right? A lot of these alliances that joined expected No to be the spearhead in heavy lifting, but indeed it was the preparation of Burr and No for that war. So it wasn't just No, of course, it was Burr and No preparing that war. But yeah, so to answer your point, indeed, I think your estimate's accurate that both of these alliances were intended to kind of lead the military charge. And after No leaving the war, I think it was Burr who took a heavy lift in terms of having to push these PV alliances forward. So yeah,
I vividly remember. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right? A war of that scale in Evacos is nothing you can have everybody run, right? And as no pun intended, is you kind of need certain people that have the military knowledge and understanding to get even a large group like that together. I mean, it's easy to say nobody likes blue blobs and all those things, which I understand. I'm a pirate at heart. I've been in EVE Online for 20 years, so. But
so why don't you act like one in the EVE Echoes?
I mean, it depends. There's probably a very long answer to that question. At the moment, I'm not really in a position to do that the way I would want to, but I mean, I guess it is what it is. What I was gonna say, it still takes a lot of effort to even hold a coalition of that size together and to do all the operations and the plannings and stuff like that. So it's not just like everybody's blue and then basically runs on its own.
No, it becomes a full-time job is what it becomes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm for sure there was a bunch of the Krabko FCs that no life that war, and I probably if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have achieved what they achieved. I tried to be very impartial with this, by the way. I'm not. I can criticize a lot of the tactics they did and strategies because there's a lot of criticism there. But at the end of the day, they had to put a lot of effort to achieve the things they achieved, right? I mean, where that has led to right now is a different matter, right? Because, I mean, some would say, I personally would say Silent today is way stronger than it was before the start of this war, which is quite funny, right? Because it's kind of the opposite of the intention of that war, which is like, okay, you guys fucked that one up, clearly. But yeah, anyway, yes, for sure there was FCs in part of Krabko that definitely no life then and helped achieve things some of the guys Krabko did achieve, which I think impartially one can say Krabko did achieve a lot of things, including, taking over certain regions like Tanao and Branch and whatever else, and, a decent push. But as I said, let's see where things are today. And compared to where things are today, clearly Not sure if the best strategy was implemented, but anyway, I'll leave that to discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it took until Tino was pretty much oh shit, by the end of December. We weren't really doing too much in Tino by then, and it took all of January before we really started.
We were still doing things in Tino.
We were. We had things
we
like
had the S3VG guys deployed out there for
oh yeah,
basically the entire duration of our time up north, and the
agreed.
S3VG guys kept a decent chunk of CC tied up in Tino for a long time. They did a great job, and I think they're probably one of the most underrated folks in terms of contributions that they made during this war.
100% agree. I remember them stealing Citadel's back multiple times between December and January as well. And there was a lot of push back and forth between them, so they did a fantastic job. I just mean in terms of us running major fleets, we'd kind of stopped doing that in the majority of those areas by end of January, essentially. So, but yeah, no, lots of small gang war was still going on. S3VG and their bomber wing was definitely a huge role in that, and slowing down whatever progression that CC was even able to make up there during that time. And they made a lot of progression. I mean, you could go back and look at the map at those times. I'm sure someone somewhere's got screenshots of the map, and I remember at the time there was a YouTube video somebody put out too, where they were showing over time between December and end of January. Sorry, I'm going to lose my voice here. So.
We also have to remember that we also, the progression was the Chinese silent groups turning over to AOA.
That's another big part of it. Yep.
Definitely looked a lot more significant when in fact it was just them leaving and joining AOA.
Correct. And a lot of that happened on the flip side during that time frame too. So.
Yeah. A lot of stuff had happened in that in the beginnings. People switched sides, and I remember there was some sort of propaganda post about, they're disbanding, they're breaking up, when it was like 7 Chinese corps or something like that. So
right.
It was like, you make it sound like a lot worse than it really was, but they ended up flipping over to AOA and joining them. So, but I want to get into Hellcamp VFK, because that was one of the most memorable parts of this war that I have. So, Crabco was making their progression up into SHH space. They had taken some Sovs in Branch and Tunnel, and they're moving in to start taking parts of Deck. And they had moved and started their formations, their staging formation in VFK. So Silent, they're like, oh, okay, well, that's what they're going to do. That's not unknown by them. But they started moving capitals into VFK. And after
I remember the
capital
exact day
fleet,
they did that.
Okay.
Was it Christmas that they had that big op? Christmas Eve, where they elephant walked in the cap fleet into VFK and then parked it, and we had everyone just chill. We're like, hey, look, guys, everything they take today, we're just gonna get back in 7 days, so it doesn't matter. Go enjoy your day with your families. This is a fucking video game. Excuse my language. Go have a nice holiday. And then 7 days later, we parked the entire cap fleet onto the station, and they wouldn't undock into us, and we took everything back.
Yep.
Yeah, so I do remember that. It said, instead of worrying about them, enjoy your holidays.
It's New Year's Eve,
because
we went from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve or something like that. Christmas Day to New Year's Day, something like that. It was right because those two holidays both fell on the weekend. Where I was like, shit, we fucked up our timers, but for the holiday. But oh well. Yep.
Yeah,
so
Hellcamp VFK.
Yeah, there was a whole month of January.
Hellcamp started, and basically Hellcamp VFK was SHH camping and bubbling this NPC station in VFK 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep either from roams happening out of there, or more importantly, keeping their capitals inside that station. They were basically stuck for a couple months. I wouldn't say any longer than 2 months, if I remember correctly, but say 2 months, those capitals had been stuck there up until certain entities had either gotten them blown up, gotten, baited out or whatever, or they ended up just not moving
DR'd
at
them
all.
out.
Yeah, they
DR'd them out.
So that call was actually really, really easy to do, because you could do cheap dictors for the cost of 10 IP, They could keep that undocked bubbled forever. If we formed up and got undocked before them, we could absolutely obliterate any cap fleet undocking into us. And I think the biggest disadvantage that CC had coming into this war is the lack of a capital FC, because they were. I still remember listening to the comms. This is a little bit fast forward, but Ozer's voice shaking at the idea of deploying caps, which, you know, justifiably so. It's a lot of ISK. It's you've got a lot of adrenaline going. It was amusing, but you know, we had used caps a lot, so you know, people were fairly comfortable with them. I can't express how important it is to have pilots who have experience in capital PvP, because everybody slows down, everyone calms down, because they know this, they've done it before. So like, I remember at one point they had 20 caps on the undock, and we undocked right into them and they docked right up, which was the right call. Doesn't mean we didn't, you know,
Harass them
pound
about
that
it.
propaganda metric about that quite hard. But once again, it all boiled down to AOA moved in, and our timers were early US time zone, and that basically stripped their combat Zerg from them, and we just bullied their US time zone for a month or two until it got to the point where I knew that burning our Sov was probably the best way to go forward.
There was still some attrition happening week to week, even though we had the Hell Camp going and we could move around a little bit. You know, I look back at how we had everything laid out. You know, looking at it now versus then, I could see we probably made a few mistakes about where our Ansiblexes were at, who was stationed where, just corp-wise even. And that made it difficult for us to be able to kind of move around as quick as what we needed to throughout Fate and the rest of Northern Deck from VFK. So yeah, every week to week, still some whole timers here and there, and we'd form up to defend as many as we could, and we'd lose one, maybe two each week out of 9 or 10, and it just kept going like that for week after week after week after week. So, yeah.
Was it during this time where eFICO had gotten taken?
Yeah, eFICO went
Was
back
that-
and forth multiple times.
Honestly, the biggest reason why we blew up our Sov, we couldn't get the crab smell out.
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah,
being a
I
meme
remember
going around
eFICO.
too. Yeah, eFICO went back and forth for like a good solid 3 weeks, maybe 4. But I'm pretty sure it went back and forth at least twice.
I think we fucked
Yeah.
up on the timer at one point, which is why it got taken initially.
Yeah, well, maybe off by an hour or something, but nothing too major. But yeah, maybe.
I'm not blaming you.
No.
I think
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was totally Taylor's fault.
Yeah, that was one of my citadels. But yeah, no.
Maybe it was half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been off by a little bit, but I don't think it was off by like a day or off by like a completely different set time of the day. But yeah, I remember it being something a little off with it that made that more difficult to defend them. Well, and of course they were going after it because eFICO has always been known as kind of the armory for the Care Bears, because that's what it was. It was Care Bears Armory at the time. Everybody knew it. And I think it was Crabco who coined it, the second Jita. That was their name for it. Nobody in Silent had ever called it that. We just called it our armory.
Hey, you think we're gonna call a Care Bears system a second Jita? Come on, get out of here.
Well, it's called that now. In fact, we renamed it, So
But now you're in Shush, so it's acceptable.
it's acceptable now, yeah. So it's Jita 4.0 now. So, but yeah, that was quite fun. And I remember forming up that first whole timer. Well, that's what the fuck up was, JD. It wasn't the timer. It was me and my fleet trying to defend it on that first whole timer, and we formed up on the inside of the gate instead of the outside of the gate because I was a big noob. And that's what. Yeah, and it was a Mac fleet that came in. And I wasn't at the point with my FCing where I could really rely on what my gut was because I wasn't sure
See,
yet.
I knew it was Taylor's fault.
See, it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
So my gut told me I should have backed off to the Ansiblex and taken it over to, I forget what the system was, but it was up that pipe a little bit and gotten behind them and then came in. Because obviously they're going for the Citadel, so why stand right in front of them? come in behind him and pick him off, try to make it a little more even, because we were outnumbered 2-1, or something like that. It was a big difference. Every single one of those fights like that was a large number difference. So that's what happened, though. We were formed up on the inside of the gate. I didn't move us like I probably should have, or at least been on the outside of the gate anyway. Yeah, that's what cost that first loss, and then it was back and forth from there.
Yeah, so for the next coming months, it's been back and forth, back and forth. They've been staging a VFK and then making progressions. Basically, SHH had given up Branch. All the Sov that was up in Branch had come back, so they'd kind of been receded a bit. They're kind of turtling up. They're still getting attacked. And then I remember the CEO meeting where JD's like, so what do you guys think about trashing all of our Sov and moving into enemy space? So, JD, if you want to tell us a little bit about that meeting and what the decision was.
So Pei and I had a conversation before we even went to the CEOs, and we were trying to figure out the best way to attrition out CC. Basically, sustaining an offensive war is one thing if your home's not on fire, but fighting a defensive war is a whole different thing, especially when there's like an entire coalition who doesn't necessarily like each other, and forcing them to form up every single whatever their whole timer is with zero intention of ever showing up did a lot for us. Basically, well, actually, I guess we got to back up slightly because we didn't even talk about the Ret Sea conquest.
Yeah, because that happened all in there too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Fountain.
yeah. So the CC, when they started stalling up north, began bullying other neutral entities at the request of other entities within their coalition. So I mean, just going back towards the Ret Sea portion, we'll talk about Fountain first before we get into the burn our Sov thing. It's kind of funny. So Ret Sea and I have always had a good relationship. Nox, I consider a pretty close friend, and I don't know what drove CC to try to bully Ret Sea, but it was kind of amusing how it was very, I don't know, historically funny how an entity that was birthed from GenFed decided to bully Ret Sea again.
Wasn't it Mr. Dash who kind of got that started? Isn't it, I got that name right? I think Mr. Dash. There was some sort of little conflict there, whatever that he got involved in, where it pissed somebody off, and maybe pissed off Osier anyway.
No, that was Gen 2.
That was way back. That was way back. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there was some other kind of little skirmish.
Well, no, it was Meow. It was Meow. So
Yeah.
Meow and Ret Sea have been going back and forth. Well, I guess it would be Boop originally. We're going back and forth for a long time. They've been fighting a constant war, and essentially, Osier went to Ret Sea and was like, "Hey, you need to stop. We're fighting a war. You can't do that." And Ret Sea's like, "No," and continued fighting Boop. So CC tried to dogpile on Ret Sea, which, a single corporation versus the largest coalition the game's ever seen. It just kind of pushes people right into, I don't want to say our arms, but it gave us an opportunity to start building some allies. And so we went down there. Was it the V3 fight? Is that the system name? Where they burned in and shot some carriers and lost like 800 bill in battleships?
That sounds right. Let me go see if I have like a note on that.
Yeah, that sounds right. V3.
Yeah. Oh, and Tyrgus is right. Ret Sea had been fighting a war with Boop for what, going on a year at that point.
Yeah.
And then Osier had the nerve to go over to them and be like, "Hey, you need to stop." It's like, dude, like, it's a totally different region. What gives you the arrogance or the belief that you have the right to tell another entity to stop a war just because they're inconveniencing your war?
Well, I think the overreach by Crab Coalition started long before that, but that was just yet the next thing and the nail in the coffin of their overreach. So
yeah, I I don't disagree there. So I mean, we fought a couple conflicts down there. The V3 timer, I jacked this up. So we ended up fighting in Cloud Ring first, and this is where the Russians really showed their strength to the CC coalition, because they had developed a new counter towards our Typhoons, with the SP30 Typhoons, which were turning mods off. Basically, they threw on a bunch of MWD GUs onto their implants and burned straight into us, and they were faster than us. So we ended up taking some decent losses, which would have made holding the Ret Sea pocket significantly easier. And probably we wouldn't have lost any caps, though the desync was pretty bad because the faxes weren't able to rep the carriers.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say that was when Razzle Dazzle was born, right? Because prior to Razzle Dazzle being the name of the coalition on the SHH side, it used to be called Demolition Coalition when the war started. So then when Ret C joined as an ally to SHH after all those movements that have happened down there, then Razzle Dazzle was born, 2.0.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly when we switched it over to Razzle Dazzle from Demolition Coalition, but it feels like it was pretty early.
It was basically right around when Ret C joined in.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if that was late January, early February. It's probably February.
let me just look up the video because it's probably like 2 weeks prior to when we had the V3 fight. But that was before we burned our off. So I mean, we were skirmishing in Cloud Ring, we were skirmishing in Fountain, and then the next week we realized that due to the distance and the lack of jump bridges to get down to Fountain, it was let's say not feasible to continue doing that defense. At which point, Ret C sold their soft to Necro, which Stony never forgave them for, which is actually a really good. It was really funny how mad Stony was.
It was a really good move on how they did. I have a note here from March 7th. So that week is when Ret C exits Fountain. I have a note from that from our podcast. And that week was when one of the fights were when we defended. That might have been the week of that last major fight. But no, this was the better one where Crabs messed up their timing or something and had to switch to Scepters. So this was after V4 probably. But it was that week when Ret C exited Fountain.
Oh, V6 was the system. It's February 13th, so we probably had the we probably changed to Razzle Dazzle right around February 1st or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have here in our show names that we've had. February 19th, I have here Razzle Dazzle first Crabco in the title. So it's for sure before February 19th is when that was changed.
So much happened really during those first few months. It kind of is a blur until you really start to sit and think about it. You have to almost piece things together and do a little backwards research to get all the dates filled in.
Right.
A lot happened real fast.
Yeah, so Razzle Dazzle was born. And since then, since the Ret C had joined in, if you can continue, MJD.
Where am I?
We hadn't got to the Burn-Sov movement.
Okay, let's see. When did we get to the Burn-Sov movement? That was probably around March, when we finally decided to.
Middle of March is what I have in my head, like around the 15th, roughly.
Yeah, that's probably about right. So Pei and I sat down and had a meeting about this. We're like, okay, how do we stall their offensive? How do we attrition out their player base? And how do we essentially make this a more even fight to where we can really start breaking down this coalition? Because people aren't going to continue defending a single entity out of a multi-region coalition for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just not going to happen. And that's when we decided, okay, well, the easiest way to do this is burn our off. And Pei thought it was, well, for lack of better terms, fucking crazy. And I gave it about a 25% success rate of ever actually taking Sov and Delve, but I knew that if we burned it for enough time, we'd always be able to return north, because there wasn't a big enough player base to take Declan. There wasn't a big enough player base to take Fade. I knew we'd always be able to return there essentially. And you know,
How long did that discussion go on for? Not to cut you off, the whole burning Sov. Like, how I'm kind of curious how that decision played out, because to me that's like the biggest ballsy move I've ever seen in this game, if I'm honest, right? So like I'm kind of curious, how was that, like a 20-minute like, yeah, let's do it, or did you guys quack a bunch first?
No. I mean, we had the meeting and we made the decision at the end of about an hour and a half meeting about the war.
Wow, okay.
And then it was about an hour and a half in, that's when we decided to move towards how we were going to market it to the CEOs.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Not really.
And so what we did is we essentially, if you've ever seen coalitions built in like the Senate or the House or something like that, we created a list of all the CEOs. We went to the ones who we knew were absolutely going to be like, yeah, fuck it, dude, we're going to war. Like, let's go live with these fuckers. Let's pick the dudes who everyone hates the most in Shush, and that's where we're going. And as soon as we said TSC, like 75% of the CEOs were like, let's fucking do it.
Fuck yeah, let's go.
I don't know why. There seems to be some vitriol between the cows and Shush for some fucking reason. I think it was the pinky skirmishes that just left some sour taste in Shush's mouth. But it was, I want to say we had a CEO meeting, and then we had a CEO meeting 24 hours after that, and it was pretty easy. I mean, everyone was locked in. There's a lot of faith in the organization as a whole, because and we've had a really successful career as an entity, in terms of wars we fought, and people knew that the resources we had backing us would sustain us. At least from some of the people we were speaking to. So, you know, we made the decision to burn the Sov and do the move fleets out of the north, and we moved down to Ned. And I mean, it was a lot of fun up until D4K.
Yeah, D4K hadn't happened yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had
but-
literally gated into period bases and killed a cap fleet belonging to Knights of Ni. I mean, we were essentially just killing TSC's U.S. time zone by living in their Sov.
Yeah, so D4
Yeah.
happened, and the very next, and that same day, I anchored a citadel. So the next day, we couldn't defend that citadel, and it died. So that was the first one of our citadels that we had anchored down there, and it was dead 24 hours later. So you know, that was the first one. We did that again though later in period
Did you
basis.
anchor like 7 citadels at that day?
No, that was
Really?
that was a week later. A week later, we went down and tried to. I think it was about a week later. We went down and tried to. Maybe we waited 2 weeks, but because of what happened in D4, it might have taken us 2 weeks. But it was a short time later that we were going to anchor 10, all in one day. And of course, Mr. Arthur Gregory and his Sigil 2, the day before we were going to anchor all of them, dies with the fucking citadel in his
Pause.
hangar.
Which
Pause real quick.
sets off all the intel networks of CC. We're like, fuck.
Right.
God damn it!
Yeah. Oh, this might be a red flag. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I want to comment about the CEO meeting though that MJD had, and they were talking about the burn soft thing, because as a CEO, like, I think there was 2 meetings. There was the initial, this is what we're thinking about, and then there's the second one, you know, Q&A type of thing, and then there's the second one that I remember I was listening to it. I drove an hour to the store. I was still listening to it. We went through the store. Actually, I stayed in the car. My wife went into the store. She came back out. I'm still listening to it, participating in the meeting. It had to have been like over a 2-hour meeting that we had discussed between all the CEOs and Silent about this is kind of what the game plan is. And then as me, as a CEO, I'm like, well, how am I going to sell this to the corp and get everybody on board? And it's just not just me, but it's every CEO within Silent has to do this. And so that was a huge change as far as war efforts and what they decided to do. And ongoing as to what they were doing. So then we can start talking about the invasion of Delve, and then D4KU had happened, and and ongoing, as well as that failed Sov drop that had happened in period basis, right? So
I feel like Fail is being way too generous to us.
hey, in my defense, I had everything. I had all my I's dotted and my
Yep.
T's crossed, and had it not for been that sigil kill, then yeah, big rip.
I mean, when you really boil down to it, what is the cost of a structure?
It was
What-
nothing. It was nothing.
Like, what are they? 13 bill for a T1 structure, and that's what we ended up doing the math on. So we're like, okay, if it's 13 bill a structure, it's 130. When it boils down to it, we were paying more out for SRP for T10 battleship fleets than we were for structures. So it was like, let's swing the bat. If we get a couple up, then we can have U.S. time zone fights, and we could really start attritioning them. But
Yeah, and I anchored 2 on that one. So in total, I lost 3 down there. Not only the ones that were up in Declan, but all those down there too. I think that last time I mathed all that out, it was either 10 or 11 citadels total that I lost during that time.
So let's talk about D4KU for a second there. And I know MJD is going to be regretting this, but
this
it was
PTSD at its finest.
It was a huge win for the Crabco at the time for D4KU, and I guess I'll let him talk about it as to his experience there and what had happened. Needless to say, I was there, not in a capital, unfortunately, but I did get to witness the demise of that capital fleet that ended up jumping in.
Fortunately,
So-
right?
Second door.
I say you mean you were fortunately not in the capital.
Oh no, I wish I would have been in a
Fortunately.
cap. No, I wish I would have been in a cap.
Okay.
Yeah. I was
So-
in, I was
No,
in 2
actually-
nightmares that day, which were totally ineffective. So I wish I would.
Yeah. So guys, sorry again. By the way, I switched to mobile connection. It seems to have stabilized. I can actually follow the conversation now.
Oh, good,
Nice,
good.
welcome. All right, so
Okay.
we had a plan for D4K. The cap fleet was gonna jump in, reapproach the gate, and camp the gate. They were never supposed to come off the gate. We had it all planned out. I was gonna go to my meeting. I was gonna hear about how successful the meme fleet was at killing the T1 Citadel. Our cap fleet successfully docked up back in what is that connecting system in Lowsec? Shit, what's right next door to D4K?
That's Hophib, isn't it? Or
Hophib.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So we'd be successfully docked back up. Everyone had beers, had a great day. I get a ping like 2 hours into my work day. I'm in a meeting. Cat fleet tackled on an Ansiblex, and my guts just dropped to my feet. And I'm just like, this is not going to be good because it's AOA time zone. This is the exact opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. This was not going to be good. So, I guess there was tunnel vision on an AOA fleet coming through the Ansiblex, and a warp command was given, and they took our cap fleet to the Ansiblex. And at which point, multiple of our faxes got stuck inside the Ansiblex after multiple hours, were unable to peel their way out of it because of the mechanics of bumping while stuck inside the Ansiblex. And I mean, they held up for hours. I formed up let's see, we got 10 caps the first time I tried to go in. We lost, I think, 1 jumping in. Then we came back with 15. We lost another one trying to clear the gate for them. And then we lost, no, we didn't lose anyone on the third time. We actually opened the gate, but at that time they finally broke the tanks of the cap fleet that was on the Ansiblex after 4 hours of tanking, and that was that.
Yeah.
And experience played a large part there. I mean, it was just AOA sat out at 100, applying DPS and essentially wearing down the cap of the capital fleet. They wouldn't leave the nesters behind, which is still, hindsight being 2020, was what they should have done, and they should have left the faxes behind. But it's really hard for newer cap FCs to make that decision. And hindsight being what it is, it's we got stuck. We couldn't get off the Ansiblex, and they could keep jumping in dictors from the other side and bubbling it. And I mean, that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
they just died. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to provide a bit more nuance to that. There's a couple of sides to it, but finish off with you on JD.
I think the biggest thing that surprised me that entire time is it was the perfect opportunity for Crabco to get experience for their capital pilots, and they didn't take it. And I think that kind of it was that time when I knew that we'd probably never see a cap fight in the entirety of this war, which was disappointing. I mean, I would have jumped in at range and just munched the fleet, but you know, to each their own. At the end of the day, the caps were still dead.
They were just pouring people in through that gate, just nonstop through Hopib into the. They just kept pouring him in nonstop. Hayu and I were in two different. Well, I was in two different nightmares. He was in one, and we kept trying to get them to not get reinforcements through. And that was at the time when yes, I believe it was the Russians. About 90 max came in and wiped Hayu and I out with our little 20-man battleship group we had trying to clear the gate. That didn't last very long either. So there was a lot of little things that got lost that day. But yeah, go ahead, Run.
Yeah, no, it's so it's funny because the objective of that fight was very simple. It was just to blow up a T1, okay? And it was a motley crew of about 20 to 25 dudes between EQ and CRB that were intended to do a specific doctrine to blow out the T1, right? And the idea was that the caps, as JD said, stuck on the gate. Of course, there was one or two geniuses in that fleet who were, as JD said, more junior Cap FC who decided to align and warp off. Some would say what they did was warp to Moby, and I think that's quite a accurate description, right? And if you guys know guys like Matty, who it's not the first stunt of these he does. He's a great pilot, but we will forever remember Matty, who was the guy who warped the fleet of caps into Moby. But either way, he's still a legend in this game. But yeah, at the same time, that two little nuances to that fight, because actually, despite it being a pretty decent loss for that war in terms of caps, there's two elements. One is that indeed that fleet of subcaps, which was 20 dudes, was being brought tons and tons of fleets. Because I remember, you guys remember, this was like literally, it was the worst time for US time zone silent, right? And it was the best time for +8 especially, but on top of that, it's like, I don't know how many people ended up in that system of the enemies, but it was like 500 upwards maybe, and they kept on piling in from everywhere. So we were trying to blow up the Citadel, right, while our guys were stuck in the Ansiblix, and we actually ended up destroying it despite, I don't know, we were 25 guys against maybe like 220 or something like that, and we managed to blow up the Citadel. And then we just felt incapable of like doing, what else can we do? Like, we're not going to walk to the Ansible because they'll just munch us, right? So D4K was indeed destroyed. Like, the objective was destroyed, but sadly, you know.
It only cost us 2.3 trill to kill that 13 kill Citadel. Op success.
And they anchored the Citadel like another Citadel there. Like
I think it was like
later.
3 hours later.
Yeah,
no, it was like hours later.
Same day. Yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
It's that toxic positivity you see of some of these alliances, right? Which is like, we completed our objective, you know? we lost the entire capital, but the Citadel's dead, though.
That was a meme, guys. I don't actually think D4KU was a success before this goes on Reddit.
I've seen guys like Hersis, whatever his name is, post shit like that in previous wars, and it makes me so much, like, it makes me laugh so much. It's like, the spin is you can never like underestimate the capacity of people to spin it to a win, which was very funny. The other nuance to this little D4K, which I think is worth mentioning, is that, fuck, dude, they were facing 400 subcaps with not a very large capital fleet.
40 dudes.
And they tanked that for 4 freaking hours. And it's worthy of mentioning that happened because of a specific doctrine at the time that RITC had engineered, which was the first time being applied at scale. And I know the people who theory crafted that, and to me it made perfect sense. But of course, you can theory craft it versus putting it in actual practice,
right?
Which was seeing that entire cap fleet actually tank all that incoming damage. I remember, like, so you guys understand, we're talking about siege, focus crystal, high implant damages coming non-stop, you know, and these caps not being able to, which again was an error, right? Not being able to retaliate from that. But that doctrine actually worked pretty nicely. And again, as JD said, we haven't seen, sadly, major cap on cap fights, but it was the first time that we had seen like, you know, a full cap doctrine in play that actually was successful. Obviously, you know, it was successful, but you know, you can only last so long, right? After 4 or 5 hours fighting, there was always is always going to end at some point. But either way, like the people who were involved in that, I would say from CC standpoint, and even the people who lost caps, and even the people like in either, you know, I was with the sub caps. I think that was a fucking epic day. Either way, you know, it was epic all round in terms of, you know, despite it being a loss for us, like we can say objectively as a game that was still quite an epic event. You know.
Oh yeah. That's where those "I was there" stories are all born out of, is epic fights like that, win or lose or draw, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You don't forget those kinds of moments. So it's part of what the game's about.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a major win for the Crabco at the time for dealing 2.3 trillion.
2.3
in
everybody drink. That's a
yeah,
shot.
2.3.
About 350 billion.
350 billion. Yeah.
I mean, you can't even say Declan, so I'm gonna give the guy a break.
I know.
No, that's why I just say deck. Yeah, that's why I just stick to deck. Yeah. But you know, that kind of battle that had happened, I don't think any of those pilots really regret it. You know, they probably had a fun time, you know, the length of it and what they had killed in contrast to what they had lost as well. So, you know, the other side did take a lot of losses, but they, like these guys had said, they just kept coming. They just, you know, pinging and getting more and more ships. They're just coming. And ultimately 44 caps, if I remember the numbers correctly, it was about 44 that had gone down, capitals on the SHH side. So I remember commenting on that. That was like one of the biggest losses in the game history at the time, was that battle. And I mean, granted, it was part of the war. It was over that Citadel. It happened in D4KU. There's video footage of it everywhere. I've seen people requesting that, but I'm sure there's it's all on YouTube. But holy smokes. And then you think all of that got SRP'd by SHH.
It didn't get SRP'd. It got
I'm sorry?
It got IP'd.
Oh yeah, IP'd. So
It
at
got
the time,
IP SRP'd.
Yes.
yeah, I still remember the ass chewing I got after that fleet. So, I mean, I'll just give you the meeting, but I was like, I basically turned my headset as low as possible so I could still hear Pay to Win before going into that channel, and you know, he got out his frustrations with me, and then he said, "All right, let's get it IP'd." And I think it was 6.5 days we had everything IP'd and back to all the pilots. It would have been 5, but someone didn't accept their contract. So you know, talking about stress testing the SRP, and you know, after a fight like that, you know, confidence is always low, so we had to rebuild everything back up. But you know, that's where I think that's where I started looking at alternatives for where we would go from there in terms of what the next step of or what the next theater was going to be. The period basis was kind of we'll call it a Hail Mary in terms of getting some US time zone stuff, because they had everything timed to Friday at +8 time zone, and we were never going to commit to a fight at Friday +8 time zone. Just the fact that we could keep them forming up every Friday was hilarious.
Yeah.
But, we weren't going to burn out our people by doing that.
And that is when, and after the loss of those citadels, that's when the idea of turning this into the great adventure from Declan to Declan
Yeah.
was born.
So, I mean, granted, you know, okay, D4 happened. There was the whole burn our SOVs. So SHH literally killed their SOVs. I had a member get the kill mails of my citadels. Some of them were retreated, or not retreated, but what's the word I'm looking for? Either way, abandoned, let's say, abandoned. So Crabco was picking up abandoned citadels. We got the other ones. Eventually, SHH was no longer on the map, according to the star charts, I guess you could say. So they had completely got rid of all of their Sovs and decided that they wanted to move into Delve. And so that had happened, and that was ongoing for 2 months, right? About 2 months. And, they were living in Losec and within Delve and harassing TSC at the time that it was. And so now another major incident that had happened was the potential the failure to drop Sov in period basis. Taylor, I think you were you spearheading that whole thing, or who was kind of in charge of the
I forgot about the
period
Senna,
basis thing?
the Senna gank too.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say I was spearheading it, but I was definitely planning it. I was definitely part of the planning people of who's getting what where, who's going to have their citadels in place, who's logged off ready, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if spearhead's the right word, but I definitely planned all that out. Yeah.
So what was the point of trying to drop Sov in period basis?
You need a U.S. time zone. You need something to anchor to. You need something to get them to come to you during your time frame. That would have changed. That'd have been a game changer at that point with our own groups, our own morale, and theirs as well. That was, and at the time they were literally just anchoring all over the damn place. And I think JD pointed out at some point, there's not going to be anywhere left for us to anchor anything because they're going to have every damn system anchored and all tanked for Friday morning. Then what?
So what you guys also didn't see at the highest levels is we were also already looking at returning back to Declan. But when we quietly kind of like, hey guys, what do you think about going back north? Everyone was like, are you fucking crazy? So a lesson needed to be provided. If we were successful, it was great because, like Taylor said, U.S. time zone. But yeah, so anyways.
By the
If
way,
I
guys,
recall
maybe,
correctly-
maybe for the viewers that haven't been there, so put in a timeline, like where are we right now in terms of the war progress?
Let's see, we're about
We should
May.
be around like February, right? March.
March was when we burned our Sov and went south. 2 months later, in May, is when we would return back to Declan. So we're talking about the period
Right,
between
yeah, that's
March
right.
and May.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I was
if
just
I
saying, like,
recall
since
correctly-
it's like the 1
Okay,
year
go ahead.
anniversary, so some people might need a little bit of timeline to follow what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. It's quite a lot. We've already been talking. For
I'd started to put
over
down a
an hour.
timeline, and I was literally for like today, and I was even doing like a graphic for it, and I had like 3 months laid. I started with 4 months laid out like on a slide, and was trying to put things on it, and realized I can't fit everything inside this one page. So then I turned it into 2 months, and by the time I got to where we were about ready to start the show, I literally just had December with like 15 different things on it already. So I kind of got a little carried away with it, but trying to get a full detailed.
That's the homework you wanted to do on air.
Not really.
Yeah, it's
sort
like
of, but not to that detail.
Maybe not to that detail, but in general, to talk about a year's worth of experiences, in one episode is kind of
kind of tough.
Granted, we it's a bit tough too. We could talk about this for 4 hours probably, but granted, I don't want to do 4 hours, but if it happens, I don't know. But I do recall in the CEO meeting about Invade Delve, burn the Sov and all that type of stuff as potentially one of the fallbacks if it fails to come back to deck. But the whole thing is for it to not fail. So everybody was on board and okay, burn TSC and this and that. And then there was that whole propaganda push. We were living in Delve. Then there was that incident where the Sov drop had failed in period basis. And then so now here we are back to the drawing board. It's like, okay, looks like we're going to go back to deck.
And that was in May.
So we started. This was actually a really fun period. So, we kind of took a pulse of the coalition, not Razzle, of CC at this point. I think they renamed it Hippos at this point. I
Well,
don't
they
remember.
declared the war was over.
Oh, that's
May
right.
1st.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Which I love when one side just decides that a war's over and they get zero input, zero communication with the leadership of the entity they're allegedly fighting. Good things have occurred from that, from what we've seen. So we go back north. We throw down I forgot what citadel, but no need to name it. But we threw down one of them, and we're just kicking the shit out of any fleet that was coming in there with caps. And we saw a really, really mundane response, maybe would be the correct word for it, from
Mild.
CC.
Yeah,
Mild.
It was pretty
maybe.
small. Yeah.
And that's where we see them bring in I think 100 subs against our 70 caps in the eFICO pocket, and I think we reclaimed Declan in about 28 days. I think that's about right.
Yeah, it was the month of May for sure.
Yeah.
There was one system we put down, and then it was a week later that we put down another group of
15.
Yeah.
So we dropped 15 structures because we had everyone level up their corp tech tree. So essentially you have 6 hours and your citadel's anchored and set to the right time.
Yeah.
That was a game changer for me.
Oh, it was
anyway.
great.
To me, that whole change and the corp tech tree and everything that came out, yeah.
Well, I want to say that this happened in April with the April patch that we got with the T4 citadels and the corp tech tree system coming out.
The only reason I know it was May is because this video.
Yeah, I mean, I can go back and look at when I anchored too. So I mean,
so May 21st is when we were fighting in what is this system? I don't know. It's when before Meliodas quit, when he jumped into us and we just munched because caps are really OP. So we reclaimed, and then that's kind of when we started grinding out the leftovers up north. We ended up coming to terms with Meow after we took down their Ansiblex network and Pureblind, and that's when we started really kind of poking at AOA structures and prepping for that's actually probably about the same time that we deployed all the special ops groups into OG space. Amar's group, Pinky's group, and the rest. We were looking for who we viewed as the weakest, who would die probably to a guerrilla campaign, and OG kind of was up there.
Well, let's pause you right there. Pause you. Doro, if I can get you to speak about the change of name and what had happened to Ozure and how that kind of all happened, and then the formation of the Hippos and what that ended up being.
Well, that's a good question. So you mean when Crabco became Hippos?
Yeah.
Correct.
So this was created shortly after I returned to the game. So I believe what it was intended to be, honestly, since JD said it, the war was declared over, kind of one-sided, which I agree is not necessarily the best way to do it. But the Hippos coalition was kind of a coalition to sort of defend each other from incoming attacks from the north. In that case, I mean, we all know didn't really do a whole lot in terms of war progress. And that's also ultimately why I left it when I did, because I didn't really see a huge benefit in having that huge coalition after the war kind of died down. Wouldn't necessarily say it was over, but for sure wasn't really going on a whole lot at that point. And then probably just started picking back up in, I would say, July.
So that was when the formation of the Hippos was actually deemed as the Hippo Coalition, or Triple H. I think I referred to it. It was Hungry Hungry Hippos, and so it was basically a pact to all defend each other from SHH, who had already reclaimed Sov in the north. Then now they're kind of on a campaign to start attacking all these entities that had, for lack of a better term, dogpiled onto the original war deck that had happened. So now that SHH is home again, now they're building up, and they're starting to prepare for attacks. And so then HHH was formed to defend each other in, as far as war efforts goes. And then that had lasted just a couple months prior to them renaming to Pact 2023. So during that time,
not really correct. So it kind of had a dual purpose, I would say. The Hippos, like, yes, defense, and also was more or less like a platform to provide content for certain people and certain groups. Also, I guess, also for those who weren't necessarily big parties of the war. But end of the day, with so many people, as you used the term, dogpiled in there, I don't know. I guess it was uncomfortable for me as well.
So I do have a question. Why didn't you guys defend OG? That was the agreement, to defend the entities who were part of.
Because you're missing a month in between. So when Mel quit the game and basically also announced that he's not coming back, Oz quit the game as well. I took over Burr, and I believe, well, we had a lot of internal restructuring to do in terms of leadership, reorganizing things, as you might imagine. Also getting new corporations on board, stuff like that. And I believe first thing I decided was to actually quit the Hippos Coalition, because I saw no merit in continuing that, because I wanted to focus on Burr as an alliance, and wanted to, well, sort our own problems before we sort everybody else's. And I believe you guys went on to attack OG after we quit. So we, at that time, when the whole offense from Silent against OG started, were in no coalition at all.
Actually, I wanted to touch on a couple things from different periods which we've forgotten previously. Actually, I don't want to go back in history so much and break what Doro just said, but it's in relevance to the attitude that I've seen, at least, and not specifically about this specific episode of defending OG, but in general, the respect that CC had for its members, right? So there's a couple things I wanna touch on, because we passed that time zone, right? So as you guys mentioned now, defending OG, right? So the intention of CC was that every CC member would defend each other, all right? And also it was kind of to destroy the tyranny, supposedly tyranny, of Silent, which is quite interesting, the tyranny of Silent, because I guess Silent had attacked on certain occasions some specific core, like a smaller level alliances, not at a level which I would consider to be like extremely blobby, but rather for whatever political reasons. One can agree or disagree whether that's a good move or not, right? But it's funny because these same alliances, Burr being one of them, AOA being another one, I remember at the formation of Burr, because I sat down with Meliodas, and at the time it was Kerensky, and Mel and I spoke a lot of times. Their model was, we want to extract rent from people, right? So it's like, and if we don't extract rent from them, we basically annihilate them, right? We remove their sov, and they won't live in sovereignty, which is funny because that it's almost like that one's fine, but no, like Shush at the time attacking certain land for whatever XYZ political reason is wrong, but asking demanding rent from renters is fine. And not only Burr did this, but also Void, I think, did it with Cash. AOA has done it everywhere. So it's quite an interesting, set of dynamics. And maybe I'm missing out on TSC doing it or Meow doing it. But anyway, regardless of that,
on the drawing board, man. Just on the drawing board, right? Like at no point in the history of Burr, and I was there as well. At no point in our history did we actually extort anybody.
That's 100% a lie, and I can point you to several people, to include Senes Corporation, where you extorted them. So
here's the thing. Here. Yeah, I am, and here's the thing with the red-headed stepchildren, right? So that was somewhat a personal thing, I believe, between Cena and Meliodas, which also turned very sour at some point. But from the bigger perspective, when it comes to the renting model of Burr, and I will not necessarily speak for everything that Mel did back in the day in all those DMs that I have no access to, but since I'm running Burr, I have never encountered any issue with any renters, or that we actually threatened anybody to obliterate their SOV if they don't pay rent.
Well, if you want to blame Meliodas for it, you 100% in the history of Burr have extorted people.
Yeah, I can agree that Doro, during his time, already inherited an alliance. Not inherited as in like a gift, but rather he inherited an alliance at a different timeline. I can agree with it. Like, that to me makes sense. But I'm just talking about the onset of what Burr is based on, right? And not only Burr, I'm talking not just about Burr. And I don't want to dive too deep into this unless Doro wants more explanation on it, or JD or whoever. But it's more about to touch on the subject of CC defending its own members, right? So to touch on that subject again and go back to the original point. So it's worthy of a couple things. Number one, it was that we were trying to stop, in theory, of CC, to stop the tyranny of silence, right? But at the same time, they went for RITC, which was just one corp. RITC then sold their sovereignty to Myth, right? I guess you guys forgot about that element in history. They sold their sovereignty to Myth. This was apparently a big issue, that they sold their sovereignty. And promptly after, Myth was also invaded. Myth was completely neutral, at all times wanted to be neutral, wanted nothing to do with this war, participated nothing in this war, and indeed got invaded by CC as well. I think we forget that little element as well, just because it's the nuances, it's the purpose of these things, right? And also, I'll touch on to another one, and I think I'm missing a couple in this one, but let's talk about an alliance called Otto. You guys remember Otto Alliance at the beginning of the war? I'm sure you guys remember Otto Alliance, but Otto Alliance was an alliance that partook part of being with CC. They were a Chinese alliance. They were down in Tenerife, and you guys don't remember, what happened is at a certain point later on in the war, at the near end of when, and again touching on Hungry Hippos, right before Hungry Hippos, Otto said, basically, we've partook in this war. We're gonna leave now, the coalition. What happened immediately after? AOA invaded their space, a prior member of Crab Coalition, and completely wiped them out of existence. I mean, if you go back into the history of AOA, they did this with SCG members. They've done this with other corporations, but it's just funny, the double morale, of like, no, it's fine. It's bad if Shush does it, but it's completely fine if AOA did it. But to the extent in which CC did it to its own members. And I think we forget that little nuance about defending its own members. And just to touch on this subject again, which was the origin of it regarding OG and defending of OG, it's quite obvious to me, or appears to be obvious. Maybe I'm completely wrong, because to be honest, I'm not so deeply into these conversations at a leadership level with whatever the fucking new name is, Pact 3.0, I don't even know. But anyway, these guys, at the end of the day, in my eyes, it looks like it was convenient to let OG die, because a lot of those corps have been absorbed by the other existing alliances, which in this case have been Burr and Void.
Burr, Void. Now go look at Detroit right now and tell me what you see on the map.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about that, right? So let's talk about that defense. So wasn't it the idea that that CC would defend each one of the members? And what's happened? Detroit, as you rightly said, Taylor Rick, is now being sold as an extra region for AOA to sell renter space. Deathrid, and not only Deathrid, also Wicked Creek. I'm in their chats, dude. I read fucking AOE. I think the members of CC don't read their chats because they're allies. Like, I don't usually read the chats of Shish in this case, right? Because they're my allies. I know what they're doing, right? But I'm not so much involved. In this case, the space of OG has been sold as renter space again, and the same with Deathrid, which was ex-OG space. So they don't even respect the new alliance, which was dropped. They just fucking invaded it. Now AA's got 9 regions. So to talk about the elements of defending, their own members, and it just seemed to me like it was quite convenient to let OG die, because what's happened with OG members? They've gone to Burr, they've gone to Void, I don't know what other alliance they've gone to. They've tried to do Drop, which obviously has failed. And obviously, there's a lot more nuance to that. It's not just that. There was things with Sandman and all that jazz. But my point is, it was just interesting to see that, this affiliation, this false affiliation of these groups that do nothing else but look at their own personal interest. There's no collective interest, let's be frankly honest, at least from my standpoint, it was quite convenient to let OG die. Maybe it was very convenient also for Burr in that situation. That was a trespass of leadership to Doro. It was, whatever. And it was just maybe good timing that OG died and a bunch of them joined Burr and Void and all that stuff. But it's a small little nuance I want to touch on the inconsistencies and contradictions that I find with this enemy coalition that we face. Is that is the complete double morals, double standards, and lack of I would say respect.
I kind of think, Ron, you're making it a little bit too easy there. And I'll tell you why I think that. So, as I mentioned, and now we fast forward to the modern era of the war, right? As I said, like, we were not part of any coalition at this point anymore when Silent invaded OG, right? And
we invaded OG prior to leaving Delve, by the way, so the timeline doesn't really match up.
Yeah.
Sorry, yours timeline doesn't match up.
So, what was I going to say? We also, as an alliance, like speaking for Burr, we also had no real ties to OG in terms of like communication between leadership, right? So like I had a little bit of communication with Casper back in the day, but then he kind of got lost in traffic somehow. And there was really, it was not our war at this point, right? I mean, yeah, sure, you can say like everybody needed to defend each and every one, but I honestly do think that OG's downfall is not to be credited to Silent's offense. I do strongly believe they would have fallen apart anyways.
Wow. By who? Like AOA would have killed them? I mean, those citadels didn't blow themselves
up. No, I don't necessarily think it needed a military intervention to break the alliance. So most of the time when alliances in games like EVE die is because of internal problems first and foremost.
Yeah, but that's not true though, because they were still relatively strong and cohesive until the Guerrilla campaign was about a month and a half old. You can only defend a structure so many times and get wiped so many times before morale starts shattering.
Yeah, granted. I'm not arguing against that, but then again, I was also not really heavily involved in those operations over there, so I couldn't really tell how much OG was defending or how the battles were looking.
So Run had mentioned Myth in all of this, and I remember Myth being a neutral entity and not really being part of the war until they had entities of the Crabco or Hippos at the time, whichever one, had them pushing into their, or was it Meow? I'm getting mixed up, but either way, Myth ended up right, yeah. So Ziad was part of Nilf, which was in Myth at the time.
We got fucking destroyed in 2 weeks. for no reason. We were stopped from going after Das Boop when we Red Sea took the first citadel, and of course when you have the backing of the entire CC behind you, we had no option but to stop the offensive so Das Boop can focus on the other side with help. After Das Boop got merged into Meow. They came back, destroyed every citadel in their way, and completely pushed everyone out. And they shared it with DCOS and I believe another Russian alliance, and they completely sino-jammed the entirety of Fountain. That's what you get when you stand against them. You just get curb stomped. So we had no choice but to stop and listen and don't act. That's the entire reason why we're not joining at the beginning.
So then it came down to the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Myth had joined the Razzle Dazzle.
Yep.
And they joined SHH. Yeah. So at this time, SHH actually had gotten stronger by getting those corporations. As far as war efforts goes, they ended up getting quite a bit of PvPers, and like they had said, is there's ongoing things happening in OG at this time, and a major turn that had happened was the corporation of Some leaving OG, and some could even say that was part of one of the downfalls that OG had had.
Are you about to make a really bad pun? Don't do it. For the health of everyone here, don't do it.
And Some they had joined SHH as well, and so then that provided more motivation and more manpower within Razzle Dazzle to be able to forward deploy in other territories. So we're currently right around the time of OG, right? So as we all know, OG had then since disbanded, but Sandman at the start of the war, whether he started it or not, that's debatable, but at the start of the war, he was part of it.
He started all the wars in the game. Please get your facts right.
Yeah. That's
every
debatable.
Single one.
Every single war, Sandman's been part of it in some way or form, shape or form, right?
No. Created it. Again, he created it.
He's the big brain dude behind everything.
So he had quit, right? And
he'd be gone for some time. By the time
then OG had changed. Yeah, OG had changed leadership. So I believe it was the leader of Mildly Intoxicated that ended up getting that and his team. Yeah, whatever their team was, they ended up kind of getting OG and trying to piece it together what they had up until the time that it disbanded. And then now we're into the current rendition of the war efforts that are still happening, by the way. And there's still fights that are happening down in Void Space over citadels and POSs and all this type of stuff. Hellcamp type situations are also happening. So here we are in modern day Razzle Dazzle versus Pact 23. They had since then been renamed to Pact 23. Doro, if you can give us what Pact is in comparison to what it was as HHH.
So, well, I need to say something first, right? So I'm by no standard the spokesperson of Pact, because that is not necessarily a coalition I had any, or I was doing anything for, or was brokering anything there. So what, speaking from a bird perspective, what happens is that Void asked me to help them defend their space, and that is the only reason why I'm there. Like, I didn't necessarily want to join Pact or any other coalition, so Burr purely moved over to Void Space to defend Void.
It's almost like if you would have reached out, and we probably could have found terms. Weird how communication works.
Well, it's not like you had the same chance to do so.
But why would I make peace with you when we're steamrolling your allies?
Yeah, it looks a lot like steamrolling, for sure.
I mean, we've just eliminated the last, week one alliance in the game. Void can't rat in U.S. time zone, which most of their player base is. And the only reason they haven't died in its entirety is because it's being time zone tanked to AOA, which we're taking citadels up north. I think we're up to 15 now.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need to talk about details. I mean, you announced that
I know,
you
because it's
wanna kill
inconvenient to
Void.
your narrative.
No, I don't have a narrative. It just, I mean, you said you're gonna kill Void. Just go ahead. This is all I'm saying. Like, if I look at the map, I still see pretty much all of Void.
So,
Wow.
and this is where I think we see a total misunderstanding to how the game works. There are multiple ways to kill alliances, right? If an entity cannot do these combined relationships with each other for an extended amount of time, the player base leaves and goes elsewhere, which is convenient for you considering how many corps you picked up from OG. So I guess I do kind of understand.
Which was a total
the
coincidence,
attraction-
actually.
The attraction of being in a position to poach. So I guess it does make sense for Burr and the health of your alliance to be there.
Well, first and foremost, nobody poached anybody. So I was basically just in regular diplomatic contacts with everybody. I did not approach any corporation from OG or Void or anybody and aggressively tried to poach them. I basically told them what the diplomatic landscape is looking like, and they made their decision on their own. They had other options to go for, and they chose Burr. So
Didn't
I
poach him,
wouldn't
but told him you guys are
necessarily
about ready to
poached
get steamrolled.
Yeah. Hey
Yeah.
guys, you're about to lose all your space. We have a lot of stuff out in the trailer park of New Eden. Come on down. In the
Yeah.
warm embrace
But
of our
here's a
AOA
question.
botting overlords.
Here's a question for you, JD. So since you said there's multiple ways to win a war, right? So maybe then go ahead and tell everybody what were your victory conditions for OG. Like, you made demands to OG to end the war, right?
No, they actually completely collapsed and they came to us and we were said, okay, really easy. So we understand that you guys are actually adamant about being neutral. All you have to do is retreat to this pocket. We'll blow up all the neutral solve around there, and then you're more than welcome to settle.
What pocket was that?
It's the one next to. Oh, good lord! It's somewhere up in Wicked. It doesn't really matter at this point. We also offered them all of tribute. We said, hey, there's some folks up there. You wouldn't be under our umbrella in any way. You'd be able to do whatever you want. You'd be able to claim whatever systems you want. Moving out of the war zone is a good idea, but what we won't do is have someone two-faced who would give docking rights to an entity and who would essentially be living right next to their ally again, which would allow pilots to go into the new drop alliance to rat safely without harassment. Basically, we had a list of terms that they needed to complete for 30 days. And once that happened,
Did they find your terms acceptable?
no, which they're entitled to refuse them. Like, which is why we're still at war with them. Like, I don't understand how you think that like them refusing our terms makes anything different. Like, our terms were reasonable, they refused them, so they're still at war. That's just how it goes.
Also, if we talk about, it's an interesting one, this one. So if we talk about defeating certain enemies, right, during this war, it's also worthy to remember a little detail from, again, going back in the timeline of this war, right, and conditions. So let's remember, guys, we forget about fire, all right? Fire was basically the Chinese, mainly Chinese, renter corporations that No had in the time. And some of them were actually members of No itself, not just our alliance yet, right? So Fire, at a certain point, I mean, I was very much against them joining the war, but essentially they got crumbled, and majority of the war for the first month or 2 months was basically CC grinding structures that were undefended from Fire, okay? And at that point, I was seeing that, I was like, okay, well, I wonder what's going to happen with this. I remember speaking with some members of Burr. I was speaking with some members of CC at the time. I said, look, guys, Fire's going to fold, right? Their diplomat spoke to me and was like, Run, what do we do? And I said to him, look, I can speak to the executors of CC right now and see what they want to do. I think the most sustainable thing is for them to let you drop out of the war, maybe, I don't know, figure out some deal. And instead what happened, which is quite interesting, is that Fire got merged into AOA, and actually became a forced renter from AOA, which again, that alliance was the only alliance that had ever opposed any sort of counterforce in the same time zone to AOA, and instead they were forced to merge into them, right, by CC leadership. So again, if we're talking about the history of conditions of losing, nowadays, again, I repeat, nowadays AOA is a 9-region alliance that no other alliance in this game will be able to take down. I mean, there's different ways that can be taken down. I'm sure they'll be tried, but realistically, an entire time zone is on the same path, is on the same side, and because of these decisions. So let's not forget these things as well. In the past, as we discussed, like the terms now of basically OG.
I
As
do
far as I'm
enjoy that
aware-
we're the bad guys for this, by the way, Run. When
Yeah, no-
the terms that were going to be listed for Shush was basically the complete destruction of the Federation with Pay to Win and Michael JD quitting the game.
Yeah,
Which,
of course,
had you
but-
just waited, I would have been free, fuckers.
What I find funny in this situation, JD, is that it was fine for AOA to merge, to basically absorb and force rent or wipe them out on fire, right? Which conceded out of the war. But did Shish ask for OG to merge into it? Did you guys ask for OG to join Shish in this case?
Nope.
Did you guys ask them to join your side of the war? You didn't,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
You just put some conditions because, well, they attempted to completely wipe you out, right? So you said, okay, you guys are going to be limited in this way until we end the war, right? So
It wasn't
funny.
even until we end the war. It was going to be 30 days, and then they'd be able to do whatever the fuck they want, just so we could ensure that there was no two-faced actions in an active war zone, because they're essentially living in an active war zone. So the refusal to move, like, it would have been even less restrictive had they gone to a different region. We even offered them to go to Cash. We said we'd grind it out for them so they'd have that option, and they refused it.
Yeah, I just think it's worth putting that in context, right? Because of the history. This is at the end of the day, this is a year-long conversation. It's a year-long episode, right? So it's important that we understand the context and the nuances of what's happened during that year, right? It's been a year since this war started. So there's many aspects of what's happened, and I know Doro has inherited his alliance, but his own executor of his own alliance in which he was decided that in the past, right? Decided that the only participant, which at the time was Demo Coalition, was to concede, was to actually merge into another alliance, completely wiping out any balance of the same time zone. So in hindsight, I think the offers of Shush, which of course are very debatable, it comes to show the comparison, because we can't forget these things, right? And history, and especially this last year, has taught us a lot of things, a lot of contradictions of a number of sides. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but it's worth mentioning nevertheless.
All right. Yeah. So we've been talking for quite a while about this so far. And, as far as this war has gone as a topic, I think we should prepare to start closing it out. And one question I have for each one of you, our guests, is what is your most memorable battle or experience in the last year regarding this war? And we'll start with you, Doro.
I guess I have to pick the obvious one. The one in D4. I mean, I guess it depends. Like, there were memorable moments in the war, and I guess it comes down to personal preference, right? Like, I'm an FC first and foremost. So I enjoy every kind of battle. Like, if you put me in a ship on a grid, we're gonna rock and roll, right? So for me, every time we actually get a decent fleet fight, and I would always prefer even numbers, honestly, then that's a good highlight of the day.
Boy, if that's not hilarious.
Yeah, I know you were gonna say something, because I know you always finding outnumbered, obviously. But yeah, it's what it is sometimes. I remember a lot of wars that were even numbers, or a lot of fights rather. But I'm only speaking to my personal preference. I cannot always change the entire environment.
Cool. So D4KU was the battle that you find most memorable. That's cool. All right, JD, how about for you? Your experience so far, most
Uh,
memorable.
I mean, any cap deployment has been a good time for me. Being able to drop 130 caps directly in the face of AOA, wiping the subcap fleet from Pact and AOA was a blast, while their cap sat on a structure under a jammer, afraid to come at us. It was very amusing. I will say it's kind of hilarious that a battle that was carried by AOA is Doro's favorite, just from a personal perspective. But if we're just going to talk enjoyment of the entire war, I'd probably say the growth of some of the FCs as a whole. Pinky's guerrilla campaign, Amar's guerrilla campaign, and just Joda in his growth as a leader within Silent has been pretty awesome to watch.
Very nice. And how
I
about
want
for
to add
you, Ron?
one little thing. Sorry, Rambo, if I might.
Okay. Sure.
Also, the most enjoyable moments are always when Taylor Rick runs a roam and calls me out at 5 a.m. in the morning to see me on grid, and then dies within 2 minutes to a single Dramule.
That happened
That
once.
is-
That,
that was-
happened once.
I know,
Come
I
on
know.
now,
It-
That happened
but it-
once.
I know. I'm just giving you.
I think,
Oh, here we go.
I think that's something
Taylor,
Aaron I
that
can agree
happened
with.
once.
Anytime Taylor
was-
gets bullied is a good day.
It was so no, but here's the thing. You know, when Taylor pings for his fleets, right? He gives himself a nickname, and for some
Yep.
weird reason, he decided to give him the nickname Taylor. See you on grid or Rick. And then I actually saw him on grid for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning for that shit. So those are also the
Sounds like
kinds
a
of things I enjoy.
worthwhile alarm clock to me.
Yeah, that one was worth it if you get a
My,
kill.
Just don't
But-
sleep.
my fleet
I
of
do an alarm clock.
12 guys. My fleet of 12 guys and mostly bombers and frigates. And your fleet of 45 battleships. Sure.
I mean, how's the saying? We didn't need that to defeat it, but
No.
that's what we brought.
Yeah.
No, it was just fun overall. It's like those are also the kind of moments where that make me laugh a little bit. So
The nickname
It's all
wasn't
good.
the nickname wasn't a call out. It was more of we know everybody sees those pings, and the nicknames that I put in there, those aren't really those are nicknames that generally are something that somebody in one of my fleets is calling me. Like the time I forgot a prop mod on a nightmare. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Is that like every time?
Taylor makes fun of himself in this way, so I guess it's an underlying comedy.
yeah, a little bit.
Taylor, somebody bring a scanner, Rick, as your FC.
yeah, because
Yeah,
the
so-
last fleet that went out, nobody had a fucking scanner on. Like literally, guys, we're taking
Not even
sectors
the
and
FC.
bombers out, and nobody had a scanner. Not even this guy.
Are we before we finish this? I do want to say, from a personal note, and if Cinna sees this, I just appreciate everything he did in the game. It was a blast watching him grow from, as Run put it, a gen-fed Care Bear to one of the best hunters in the game. And what did I say? It's like it's the way of the yeeter. Sometimes you yeet them, sometimes you get yeeted, and he'd been doing that for 2 months, and it's just he had a good run.
You did.
Yeah. We'll be talking about that later, as far as Cinna's losses that he had experienced yesterday, and we have the kill mills to show that later as well. So yeah, everyone press F to pay your respects to that loss, and he did quit the game. So that's kind of just one of those things that you go that hardcore into doing that type of stuff, and then he put a standard to it. He says, if I ever lose it, I'm done. Well, he lost it, and he's done. So we'll talk about that later. But I want to get to Run as to his most memorable experience so far in the previous year of this war.
It's a very, very difficult question because there's been like so many mixed forms of content in what we've done. Like it's been super, super diverse. So I've literally enjoyed so much fighting with bot 5 in subcap fleets at like 3 or 4 a.m. my time, because just the dynamism that they have is just insane. With X, we like well, we've done a ton of stuff, and most of it I can't talk about, but a good chunk of it, like now it's been nerfed from like every rotation that CC used to do from like north to south. We were basically hunting their caps in low sec and capping them out in AMOD. That was fun, and I mean, there's literally so many different things. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint one. I'm sorry, I'm not quite specific with that. It's just like this is way too much. But yeah, it's been yes, of course, Blink Fleet. So like we were talking about dropping like the T1 Citadels on Delve. It was actually an experiment for Blink Fleet to try and use bombers against massive CTA fleets, and that was also again from doing ancient tactics, which I saw Dirk there on channel. Like there's been so many. As I said, we can be spiteful, angry, vengeful, and all the emotions that Eve Echoes and Eve in general brings to a game like this. For the reasons that they've been, and the contradictions, the embarrassment, how pathetic certain groups have been, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's behind all this, there has been 1 year of packed content, diverse, different, with rotating metas and doctrines, and I think that's pretty epic. So again, it would be an insult to this amazing year of content, and also that fighting alongside Shush has just been amazing, and their roster overseas is great. So it would be insulting for me to pinpoint one specifically. But yeah, it's just overall it's been good fun.
I think Run is allowed to have the reputation of causing more dev work than any corporation or alliance in the game. So he's the reason we didn't get Titans, guys.
I wouldn't say myself. I'd rather it's a group, a good collective of the members of X, specifically Suki Cage. But yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, we will keep on trying to create dev work for NetEase, hopefully.
Yeah. And I think like what Doro had mentioned is, it's not the big fights or anything like that, or capital fleets. It's some of the smaller stuff too, like going up against Taylor Rick for that fleet and then actually getting a kill mail on him and waking up at 5 a.m. Sure.
No, but I mean, you're not wrong. It's like also, CRB, for example, always deploys very thought through tactics and very refined in their approach on the battlefield, and like going up against CRB and actually nullifying some of their tactics was also a huge accomplishment on the grid on several occasions. And even though, they are also outnumbered most of the time, which is a fact, but I mean, we all know those are not your normal players, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good deal. And I want to close it out because we've been talking for 2 hours just on this one subject, and I want to get to game news and the other stuff that I kind of have an obligation to talk about. But I want to appreciate your guys' time, MJD, Doro, Run, for joining us today in front of the audience and for the podcast. I'm very appreciative about your guys' time and what you guys do in the game, both inside and out. I mean, it's great having you guys on here and talk about this type of stuff and think about what had happened in the last year. And we just barely touched it because there was so much more stuff that had happened in the past year that we could go on and talk about for hours to come. And, maybe toward the end of it, say the war does end, then we can have another episode saying, okay, well, what happened from this point to that point? And then we can, talk about it then when that, if that time
December
ever comes.
10th, 2024. See you guys then when we talk about the war being over.
So next year, yeah, we'll see you next year, next December.
Is that when the characters run out again?
That's when his Omega runs out.
Yeah, his Omega runs out at that time. So
the date's circled, guys. The date's circled. I'm out of here.
So we'll close out this segment. MJD, Doro, Run, thank you greatly for your time with us today, and I hope to see you again.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Also, just a closing remark to give because again, this I guess you guys are trying to do this show as unbiased as possible, right? But it's always very important to bring people from different sides of the spectrum in terms of, how, we're, let's just say we're definitely in one side. Many of the members of this chat, obviously I can't stop as a proviso, he's completely neutral, but Doro is on the other side. And I'll give, I can criticize Burr, Doro even, and the rest of CC a lot, but I still respect someone who will jump on, on a
100%.
voice call and is willing to talk. And just a small little note in regards to Doro. So last time I spoke to Doro actually was because there was some I think he just came back from the game or whatever, and there was some remarks about AOA racism, and he was the only guy in CC willing to actually investigate and take a stance on it. So I can respect that, and I can respect him jumping comms, because honestly, not many people in CC I've seen have the let's just say the mental
Moral fortitude.
Yeah, exactly, to jump on. So respect on that side, and I hope we get another year of awesome content and the continuation of this war, which has been fun for now. And also thank you, Taylor, Rick, and Rambo for organizing the show.
Thank you.
If I can say something to that real quick, Ron. So yeah, the thing is, at the end of the day, whether you like people, dislike people, what side of the war you're on, end of the day, it's a game. We're all in the game to enjoy ourselves, to have fun with the people we choose to play with, and it's always a question of community, right? And I mean, not only the war, but the game itself has given us so many memorable moments and so many stories to tell, honestly. So I'm not a person to be bitter or hold grudges. So when Rambo asked me to come on a podcast and speak on a topic, if I can make it, sure, why not? I mean, I support most of the content creators for this game because that's what I loved in EVE Online as well, like this podcast and all that shenanigans to keep the entire community, whether you're in a big alliance or not, engaged in the game and actually be able to follow what's going on the battlefield, because somebody that lives I don't know at one end of nullsec doesn't necessarily know what's going on the other side, right? And that's where the content creation is important, and what keeps people engaged. And I do appreciate the work all the content creators do, and I hope that they will definitely continue for at least another year when MJD's Omega runs out.
Indeed, that is true. So, yeah, we'll end it there. Like I said, guys, greatly appreciate your attendance with us today, and we'll have to talk about it. We'll have to bring you guys on again sometime in the future, and talk about it some more, some other stuff that happens, maybe with the war efforts, and we're going to go into next year already, from the looks of it. So it's going to continue on, and yeah.
All right, guys.
All right.
Awesome. I'll sign out. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you all on grid.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good evening.
And
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
As these guys are closing out, we will go to a quick break so Taylor can get his voice back, and then we'll come back. We'll hit some game news and some community news that had happened in the last week. Right after this.
HSL is recruiting for new and veteran members, living the high-sec life with none of the nullsec drama and politics. High-sec life is in need of pilots for mining, corp industry, PvE, and future PvP. We are a corporation on helping each other and others in need while growing the corp. We specialize in PvE, running high-sec island lab fleets, doing industrial activities, and have plans for future PvP activities. Join us today by searching for HSL in the search for Corporation page in game. Come live the high-sec life with us and apply today.
EVE Echoes presents Real Pilots of New Eden.
Real Pilots of New Eden.
Today we salute you, Mr. Drinkin' Dread Gate Camper Guy.
Mr. Drinkin' Dread Gate Camper Guy.
It's Thursday night. You have no work tomorrow. 2 dreads, a gate into null, and lots of alcohol.
It's time to party.
a ship jumps through into your camp. You take a shot, and then you take a shot.
Maybe I should eat first.
Your corp mates are pinging you through multiple discords. There is a 40-man fleet coming. Dear Godman, get on comms.
What? Investigation.
The fleet enters in, melts your first Drake, starts killing your second. You jump back in and fight with your Barghest.
Now I'm gonna get you.
So crack open an ice-cold can of Quaif, oh Duke of Destruction, because if you're seeing double, then that's more than enough insurance points.
Mr. Drinky, camper guy.
All right, and we are back. I would have figured Taylor would have taken a drink break or something, but Taylor, are you going to duck out for the evening?
I think I'm going to need to because I really can't. I'm coughing and everything, so I can talk for a few seconds here, and then it's gone, and then I'll start coughing. I'm having to mute myself on the back end, too. For the
hang in
recording.
there.
Yeah.
Hang in there. So, yeah, let's get into the game news and such that had happened in this last week. And, coming off that segment about the war, man, it was really great to talk to those guys and actually think back as to what all happened within the last war. And then you realize how much stuff you actually forgot to talk about. Like in the time, it's like, holy crap, I actually forgot about that incident and so on. And I've actually had to recall that several times because either I just missed it in the timeline or I didn't remember it for whatever reason. But when they brought up certain subjects, then I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. I remember talking about that on the show, and so it was great to have. Let's say that. So I'm gonna have to rely on OC and Ziad a little bit more here for the remainder of the show. Because Taylor had breadcrumb PvP before the show, and so it's hindering him just a little bit. But I want to get into the game news and
It's more than
such, and
breadcrumbs, but okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Breadcrumb PvP. In the last week, I don't think we got a dev Q&A. We did not, because the last time that they did send it, we poked a little bit of fun at it, considering that it was Q&A from October. So since then, they had an announcement about the MagicBot profile that we had discussed last week. We were talking about it as for what the profile cards were looking at, I guess, and some of the stats and stuff that we could do. And so in this last week, they had opened a channel specifically for players to share their profiles using MagicBot. So if you have your profile or characters, I should say, bound to that, then you're able to pull this information. So they on 12/6 they did announce that a cool feature, the profile, is now launched on the server, and they do have a guide here on how to do that if you hadn't done that. So it's got its own channel. You can do the / profile, and you can check out your stats there. And I was watching it for a little bit. I can't say. I think I saw OCs. I don't remember if I saw it. Oh, where did I see it? I want to say I seen yours, but maybe it was somebody else of OS that I'm thinking of that I thought was like maybe an alt. It sounded like an alt of OC Can't Stop, and so that's probably where I put 2 and 2.
That's not surprising. It's a long-held pastime that we have, is creating names to intentionally confuse each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're confused, just know that we're all confused too. We're all in the same boat.
I looked at the name and I was like, how much you want to bet that's an OC Can't Stop alt? That's literally how I say that.
Warp to Sun isn't me, but that is an EO vet. Yeah, that's the same guy that owns Warp to Sun, Jump.
Who owns Matani?
Oh, that's me.
Target
Yeah.
this,
Oh,
target
you
that.
see, I knew. I was like, that's gotta be him. That's
You're
gotta
getting a
be
good
him.
nose for it. You're like, yeah, that's the right flavor of troll. It's like you have a scanning mod. Like, but yeah, no, this is really good to see. I know some people were like kind of disappointed with it, but honestly, the takeaway I have with this more so than what it actually does, far more important is the back end, right? Even though there's only 2 commands, that's how all APIs start. Like, if you have any sort of service, just for the technical folks, if you have any sort of service that you've worked with, where you're combining multiple services together at the low level, right? You'll notice that each API has a different amount of commands, right? So we've just started off with 2 or 3, but what's more important than those 2 or 3 commands is that they exist, right? So hopefully they've done that in a way that would hope at this time frame wasn't a rush to market it as something they can easily replicate with their internal teams, right? Hopefully there's good documentation. So I don't know. I think it's a big win.
Yeah. So they had released that, and it's been pretty cool to see everybody's profile cards and to see like how much SP they have and how many kills they have, and the ship choice is odd. And I remember from talking about it last time, the ship choice on mine has changed since then. So it must capture some sort of ship info at the time that you pull it, because it's not exactly current, but it's relatively close, maybe like a day within the day. So that's a cool feature, and like I said, that opens up a lot of potential avenues that MagicBot has. And so continuing on in their announcements, they did have this one where they were experiencing a memory leak issue with the servers. As a result, we will be conducting an emergency maintenance in a very short time. The exact duration of this maintenance is yet to be determined, but please be aware that you will not be able to log in. And so they stated that they will be providing compensation for that. So I remember this, and this just so happened to be at the same time a CRB fleet was attacking some AOA related entity, and they happened to be attacking a capital ship, and then the server shut down and the capital died to the rats, if I recall the
It was
story
a Phoenix.
correctly.
They were going after the Phoenix, and they had been trying to get everybody onto that Phoenix for like an hour and a half. There was a long amount of just one by one getting another Scepter in, getting another Dictor in, keeping him tackled. I mean, it was a very, very long time.
Up to the point the server crashed, and the Phoenix did die, and it was a player that got the kill mail, but I want to say it was actually the rats that killed them, or wherever they were. And so inevitably, and let's see, is this it? I think that one was it. And Tinol, yeah. And inevitably, that player got their capital ship back due to that. So the screenshot that I seen of the kill mail happened to match the GM mail that character had shared publicly or not. I don't know if they released it. Either way, it was leaked somewhere, whether they posted on EE General or in a private server, I don't know, but I did see that this person did get their Phoenix back from customer support. So yeah, what a time to die. There it is right there. Ziad's got all the screenshots. He got his ship back. And NetEase SRP. Yes, NetEase SRP. So that was it for the announcements, and whether or not that was the memory leak, we will never know, but that was it. Now, let's see this last week if they had
the memory leak is still
notes.
Memory leak is still a problem because local is still totally screwed up, and who's logged in and who's not is still totally screwed up, and nothing's been fixed with it. So they're supposedly going to go back and fix that on Friday, and they never did. And now our number counts
of this bug.
Yeah, how many people are online in Corp, and how many people are actually in system, and all that's totally screwed up. It's very difficult. Yeah, it just makes nullsec life extremely difficult. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So for those that may not know, is there's a bug currently ongoing right now where, say, I am logged in on my main account and I have two other accounts on that device. Well, when I log in on one of those accounts, all three of those accounts will appear online and in local.
Well, after they
So,
usually would. Everyone seems to argue about that point.
right,
They're like, "There's no change." It's like, yeah, it would. As long as it was on the same account, it might stay on for close to a minute. But even on the same account, it happens, and that never was.
right. So we were seeing neutral spikes like everywhere. I had a court mate who all his alts all of a sudden became online, and it was like a neutral spike in VFK. And so it's like, what the hell? There's like 20 characters here. What's going on? And it turned out that he was just logged in on one of his accounts, and it logged all of his accounts in, and they appeared in local and all that. So like I had to add them to corp and all that stuff. But um, you're noticing this in chat counts as well as like Jita local. I saw a screenshot today of Jita local being over 1,000. How long has it been since anybody has seen Jita local of 1,000 plus?
Right? Like, and then it crashes Jita, or you can't get into Jita and you can't get out, or because it thinks the number counts there.
Right.
It's a lot of NetEase SRP.
These are just alts. Yeah, these are just alts that are not logged in, but they're logged in with this bug. So,
but they show up on the number. So
point?
how does that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How does that? I don't know how that's going to affect
So
the server.
weird.
It is a weird bug. It is, and it is a memory leak. It's
Yeah.
still the same thing. That's exactly what it is. It's still some sort of memory leak on the servers. So whatever they did a few weeks back when we had the large 700 meg, almost a full gig worth of updates, that was a hell of a lot more in that update than there is in the game than was actually released, right? It was a huge update. So, and I know that from looking at the code and looking at the details of it, and also just from common sense, that a normal update's 100 megs or less. A major update's 150, right? And so this is just there's so much shit on the back end, new stuff on the back end that hasn't come out yet. For instance, the new EVE Online Vanguard first-person shooter that's beta released Friday or whenever that was, sometime this last week. There's literally code in EVE Echoes relating back to character creation in Vanguard. I don't know why. I don't know what it's there for. It's there.
I think it's there as a monument to lessons about branch control. It sounds like some of us inherited code from other places very recently.
Well, that's an intentional thing. That code's there on purpose, right? And so, and the Calval Expanse is going to come out anytime now. There's something that they're doing there with that is causing all these other little things to break. You know, programming at this level of this sophistication of anything, it's not lazinessful. Programming of any sophistication, especially at this level with this kind of a game and being on a mobile device, is a house of cards. I don't care how good you are. You know, look at all the money spent on Windows and look at how much of a house of cards that thing can be, right? I mean, so it's, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of shit involved in it, and there's a lot of changes coming. And this is just a example of somehow, somewhere, something's getting forked from all those back-end changes.
Some things to keep in mind too, right? It's like, you know, you're right. Like more so than a skill issue, it's like, well, they've said that they're working on refactoring some stuff, and that's a really general flag to throw. But at the same time, like, let's look at the chat issue, right? For anyone who played beta, you could have told that this is going to come back to haunt us. I mean, you didn't have to be a technical person to see the types of issues they were having there. They wanted it to be a native chat. It wasn't going well. So then it's like, okay, their internal, with the way they handle their project staff, it's like, okay, imagine you're working on a project at any company, at any scale, and you're working on the prototype of this project, which is beta, how that documentation, how those systems will change. Meaning, and I don't even mean the system like EVE Echoes. I mean the system that allows you to track those changes might change over 4 years. Now imagine a completely different set of people, right? So the institutional knowledge in that team with hands on keyboard, for all we know, it's lost, right? I mean, I would say there's what, 2 main devs, 3 main devs left from beta. You know, I don't know the number, but you know what I'm saying? Like versus, and those are the people we see versus the project staff on the back end. So I think it allows a lot more to do with the business side of it than strictly dev skill hands on keyboard, right? You know, no man's an island. You know, you rely on your team. If the notes aren't good, rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. I wonder when they're going to fix that. So, moving on here, I have the patch notes pulled here, and I will just skim through them here. They do have new content, capital ship component manufacturing skills. In case you didn't notice, there are new skills on the skill tree for manufacturing, just like gunnery and the related skills for weapons. I don't think there was any for Logi. Was there any for logistics just yet? Like shield rep or anything skill? No, nothing that improves that. But like skills like gunnery, and
It's new.
the mining ones.
I'll put it that way. Nothing that's new.
Like they had those advanced skills for cannon or for just weapons and mining skills. Now they have them for manufacturing, so you can check those out. And with these, you can even further specialize into certain parts of capital manufacturing. So take a look at that type of stuff if that's something that you do.
Lowers your
Balance
your
update.
button push. It lowers your button push cost.
Put the
per part.
PSP costs in air chat, by the way. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a decent amount. It's a decent amount of SP that you're investing in that, obviously. But I mean, if you're a builder for a corp and you're making cat parts nonstop, that's a no-brainer. Because it's not just not just 5. It's not what is it? It's not just 10%. That's just 10% on the first chip they released. There's an advanced and a expert coming too.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think what's kind of interesting about more so than it just costing a lot. What's interesting is that they've released so much that it would be difficult to have all that on one character, right? Because like if you say you stack those 6 skills on one guy, right? That is something like I think it's 140 mil SP, and that's not including the base skill. So you're talking about an almost 200 mil. It's like almost a super account.
Yeah,
right?
you're specializing. Yeah, you're having to specialize your indie a little bit. Yeah. Well, all indie has to be you can't have a single indie tune that can do all scrapping, all reverse engineering, all manufacturing. You don't anymore, and you haven't for a while.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
And
interesting to
also
see them go that route.
Yeah.
So
There's code in the game
right.
too for donuts that are going to decrease the cost as well. It's not who knows if they release it or not, but it's there. The code's there. So I don't know if I don't know how that's going to impact it on top of the skill and whether or not we get serious reduction. But if you think about a capital component being 150 mil click cost versus now it's 100, and then you add donuts on top of that, regardless of their time frame. We're going to get sub 100 million click cost for cat parts, it sounds like, at some point. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That would be,
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Different game.
all it
brings
does
down the cost of them.
Yeah, all it does right now is put carriers and dreads back in line with where their price was 6 months ago.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'd be glad to see those prices come down. People are asking ridiculous amounts of pricing for them, and I'm like, man, it's not even worth that much. But according to the game, it is. So anyway, continuing on, they had the Nanocore update. The Silver Waltz series core can now be upgraded to the AI core. I did this. I got the Silver Waltz for the beautiful Typhoon Black Ops Special Ops Edition, and I put AI on it just because I can, and it is the best. It's my favorite ship, honestly. It passes my previous favorite ship being the Maelstrom. I just like the Typhoon better. I've loved the Maelstrom for 3 years, and I think separated from my love of the Maelstrom, and I switched to the Typhoon, and the Typhoon Special Ops is where it's at for me. So I did the AI core on that, and I was very happy that they implemented the AI function on that too. So cool. Now I can get even better DPS and such on that. They did optimizations. They did the market transaction record like they do every week, and they did fix a bug. They fixed an issue where the scan resolution bonus does not fall off when multiple signal amplifiers are installed. So there's that. All right. And that was it for the patch notes. And really, I don't think there is much else for actual game news. No, there's not. So we had already talked about the profile stuff in that channel. And
for those that haven't seen them and those that don't know, we should post the Cinna kill mills. I got them all ready to go. If you Cinna's death smell.
Yes, we will. So we're going to skip Consider Your Suggestion today since it's been a longer episode than usual. And we'll talk about the latest Cinna wipe, people can call it. In case you didn't know, he was a major PvPer. He most commonly was seen flown in supers, 2 of them to be exact, and along with a bunch of other capital type ships in his fleet of alts. So yesterday, as the story goes, he got baited in a CNDS and inevitably got wiped out. And so, Taylor, I hope you're posting the kill mills. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if Frost Skull is an alt of his or if it's Frosty Skull.
Frosty Skull. Frosty Skull is another character. That's not an alt of his. That's Frosty.
Okay.
That was flying that. Yeah.
Yep. So I know him as a character, like on Discord. So I wasn't sure if it was that, if that was him or if it was an alt of Cinna. So here in the on-air chat, Taylor had posted all of the kill mills that had happened. And for those that are not viewing this, I will just go through them real quick. We had a Nyx worth 2.2 trillion, a Wyvern worth 2.0 trillion, a Hell worth 2.2 trillion, a Minakawa 107, a Lif at 94 billion, another Lif at 94 Apostle. Okay, so I don't even fly these damn ships, so it's no wonder.
Yeah.
And it's all in Chinese, so that doesn't help. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fax capitals died along with the 3 supers. So what is this?
It's six. There's 6 faxes, 2 apostles, 4 Minakawas. Yep, 1 Wyvern, 1 Hell, and 1 Nyx. I mean, the only thing you're missing out of that whole group is an Aeon, for God's sakes.
Yeah. What's the rough estimate here? What are we talking here? 6 trill, 6.5 trill in
7
bosses.
I think that's 7 if you include all the faxes.
So, yeah, it was a huge loss. Like, wow. And if you were to convert that into U.S. dollars, that's probably 50 grand right there.
I've heard someone say 34, and I've heard someone say 64, and I haven't typed all that into my. I could probably pull it up, but I don't have any of the.
Depends on how you did it with the Plex. If you're doing Plex versus other stuff, but it's at least 32,000.
How much is Plex right? How much is Plex right? I can tell you. I got my little calculator thing pulled up. So how much is Plex right now?
I think it's 8 mil.
So 8 mil. So
yeah,
8.
Last time I saw it was at 8 mil. That was a couple days ago, though, so it's not accurate.
So 8 mil, and the kill value, total death, we said was what, 6 trillion or something like that? 7 trillion. We'll say 7 trillion. So 7 followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 zeros. Correct? Sounds right in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not right. That's only 7 billion. So 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Yeah, about 30 grand. If it's
Yikes.
about 30 grand.
Wow, that's really expensive.
Yeah. Felt like that was higher,
And
but
so
yeah.
the story goes as he was warned about this. He was warned that it was bait to come and get him. He decided he wanted to take the fight anyway. He's an ambitious PvPer. He went after it, months of success, by the way. His character, one of his characters is the fourth most killingest character in all of Eve Echoes. So, he's definitely got a lot of ISK positive in his kill death ratio. So in the time and since supers have gone out, he's been a notorious super pilot, and he's been wiped before, not in supers, but he's been wiped before, and we've talked about it then.
Yeah.
We were talking about NASRP and all that type of stuff, and like he was getting stuff back, but specifically he had posted so there's a Reddit thread on this I saw today, and of all people, Linwood posted it for some reason, but
okay.
I know it's just dumb, but Cinna had replied on there talking about the experience, and so actually what I can do is I actually took a screenshot of it, and I posted it in the on-air chat because I wanted to come back to this as to his statement on it. This was on the Reddit. He says, "No regrets. I had an amazing time. Seriously, Eve is fucking insane. The immersion, the passion, the thrill. What a fucking psychotic game. But this too shall come to an end. I called it a year ago. I said I'm going balls out till I die, and that's what happened. Frosty is the unsung hero. He is a talent in the team. He was the real legend. Both of us left the game laughing, holding hands, and exploding into a ball of fire. AOA did what they do best, blob and smash anyone that hunts them. I have respect for their dedication to the game, as with the entire community. Best of luck. Fuck NE for breaking every authentic fabric of quality and potential, and fly savagely. I just don't have it in me to rebuild on a platform I don't believe in. NetE is outrageously toxic, and I have no faith in future. Seriously, this community was awesome. I hope we play something together in the future. 07 for the last time, Cinna." So that was his farewell to the game after experiencing like the literal biggest loss in Eve Echoes history. So he went down in fire. Yeah, it's really not much else we could say about that other than
it was quick. I watched the video. It was quick.
I didn't watch the video, and it would pain me to watch it because
it was painful.
It's just one of those things. But like we talked about earlier, pay your respects to him as a player. If he swiped real money for that stuff, man, just there that all went too.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's got money to spend, good for him too. So I don't have anything against the guy. But just an amazing feat that had happened right there. So crazy to think, but I do know that Void is a lot happier now with him out of the game, so they might be able to undock something. I don't know, but it's possible. I've been hearing that chatter so far. So
yeah.
Hey, if the audience here is wanting a showdown between Taylor and I will admit I have more kill mills than Taylor does. So I'm just saying.
He does, actually. This is true.
If it's a one-on-one.
Curious how many of those are pods, but it's true. He has more kills.
Hey, kills a kill. We're not getting it. We don't need a breakdown unless you check my Moby stats. You could go to my Moby profile and you could look at all the kills.
Probably could.
We already determined a W is a W, man. It could be 2 trills to take a Citadel. Doesn't matter. W is a W. Man.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So yeah, it is what it is.
Let's not bring up losses, Nessival. Let's not bring up losses.
Taylor has definitely got me beat in
way
losses.
More losses. Yes.
So now that we'd covered that, Cinna, it's sounding like Frosty had also quit the game. So best
That's a
of luck
surprising
for
one.
those
That's
players.
a surprising one if Frosty left. He was very active in all kinds of trade deals, big on that end of it. So black server and everything, black market.
Now let's get to the last segment that I had, and this goes again throughout the year. We talked about the war throughout the year, and now what I want to talk about is, did NetEase provide throughout the year? And I'm going to be referencing the stuff that they said that they were going to add into the game last December on the content creator Skype call. So I told Taylor to do his homework, or maybe just our staff to do the homework. And I had come up with the questions that they had asked or had talked about in the Skype call. And so I have them as questions, and we will go over them. And we will see if they actually provided. All right? So let's get into this. OC, do you recall that Skype call that we had last December?
Well, I'd have to hear the topics to remember what was in that Skype call. To be honest with you.
Yeah. So content creators joined it, of course, and they asked a lot of questions about upcoming content throughout the week. And so some content they did say yes, and other content they either blatantly ignored or said that they were going to add, and maybe they haven't yet. So we'll go through this. So here we go. And I'm going to be asking this to you guys, okay? So we'll see if you get the answer right. New dormant realms for small ships. Did they provide?
If you're counting the fifth for that, yeah.
Can we say yes with an asterisk? Is that is that an option? Because yes.
They did.
What do you consider small ship?
But they did,
So,
though,
they
because
did.
you're running one of those with frigates and lodges. Frigates,
Yeah,
and,
right.
frigates and battle cruisers. That's small ships.
There you go. Okay.
Yes.
Next one. New anomalies exclusive to high, low, and null space. Did they provide?
Seeker. Yes.
They did. Yes, they did. And we ended up
They
getting
should.
new special anomalies, right? I don't know about high sec. I didn't see anything change with encounters, maybe because I wasn't paying attention. But they did add these waste seeker stuff, from Cobalt
All over.
Edge into high sec as well, all over the place. Yeah. So, could you consider that too? But when I saw this, I just went straight to rifts and CNDS type stuff and all that. And so that's what I was thinking of when they say to if they have provided new anomalies, in which they did. Ship design contest. Did they provide?
I should remember if that was the...
No.
They
Yes.
did.
Was it the science?
If you
game?
remember, it's the Science C. So they talked about this during the Skype call, and they said in January they're going to have that contest. So it was like one of those game events that you have to click on their tab or whatever and participate in. What we got out of that was the Science C. Yeah. So they did provide.
Wow.
The so how about this one? New cap rigs.
No.
Yes.
No.
They did.
They did?
Fighters got more rigs. Facts. Was there shield rep ones? I can't remember if there were shield rep ones for faxes.
Seems like it, yeah. And then there's there was rigs too for your haulers, not just for your special
yeah.
haul.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We did have those. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that I remember that,
Beaver's a
I
module,
wouldn't
not a
know
rig,
because
but-
I don't fit rigs on any of my ships anyway. So
Right,
I
we
wouldn't
know.
all this stuff. I know that's a shot. All right. New implants. Did NetEase provide?
Yes.
Yes.
In space and artillery.
Yes, they did. And just off the top of my head, 2 of them are the latest ones. But did they release another 2 earlier in the year? Shoot, I can't
No.
remember if it was like the initial 10 or 12 that they dropped, and then we got.
Did they?
But then even then,
Yeah, there's been 2
the
separate
mining with the
releases.
mining one.
Mining attack missiles.
Right. There's been 2
That
separate
was Gen
releases of
2.
implants. Yeah, there's supposedly more implants coming too, and more DRs coming too. I don't think they're going to fit those into this year, so we'll probably be
Yeah.
looking at the first quarter of next year for those.
So far, everything that they told the content creators in the Skype call has been correct. Okay. New materials. Did
Yep.
NetEase provide? That is correct. They did. And more specifically, if you recall the Cobalt Edge release
Yeah.
and the gas that they released as well, the C70, C60.
C50
everything
and
with that,
C60
so-
were new, and then of course C70 as well. So C50 and 60 came into this game this year too. So all the gases came out this year without any actual
And-
modules for mining those gases. You still use the same fucking lasers.
Right. Yeah. You still laser, retrieve it. But the thing is, when they say new materials, could you add in like compressed trit into that? Would that even make the same category?
I think so, because it's
The
that's
ability to compress it.
that's kind of that's a really freaking nice feature. I want the other minerals too, but not all of them. I don't think you need to compress morphite, for God's sakes. But but you definitely need to be able to do something with PI, now that the PI numbers are so damn high.
Yeah.
Be nice to see better
And
storage
Chainhead
options. for it.
provided.
Yeah, like containers,
Chain-
right?
Oh, what are those?
Right.
What are those?
Chainhead provided a screenshot here of the
Yeah.
remote shield booster.
I don't think
Logi rigs
they're
and stuff.
actually
No,
in
but
the
these are
game.
normal.
They're there, but I don't think they're actually available. Isn't that correct? I don't know if they're
These are the normal ones for the logistics, not the capital.
not available.
Okay. Well, they did add T4, so there's that. All right. Continuing on.
Right?
API. Did NetEase provide?
Yeah. I mean,
No.
these are very technical. I mean,
I'll put that as both, and here's why. No, Mario Bot, even though it's recognized as
Not an API.
The official bot for NetEase, like Killmails for Discord, it's not an actual
Yeah,
API.
it's not.
But at the same time, I'm thinking Magic Bot has the potential of doing what we would want it to do as far as the API thing goes. So, yes and no. Did they provide?
More like no and no.
We'll see.
There's-
That one
there's
that
potential
one
there.
could be debatable, right?
There's potential.
All
there.
right.
Yeah.
Corp size increase. Did NetEase provide?
No.
Yes.
If the CEO is online, asterisk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Dude, a lot of these are yes,
Okay.
asterisk, man. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, only if the CEO is online. Yeah, that's when you only get your corp increase. So
ridiculous.
that was
Don't
one of the
happen
major
these
things that we were supposed to see in April that we didn't see until like not even 2 months ago. And so that was delayed quite a bit. And well, they did provide. We can now have 300 characters in a corp?
320 is the
So
max if
at-
you spend 91 billion of liquid ISK.
Yeah, at the cost of 91 billion only,
or more.
Right. So
So like a week in clear
Yeah.
them, or I mean,
Yeah, at this rate.
no. I probably have some people making that. I don't know. All right. So yeah, they did incorporate that. Next one, T4 Citadels, more energy points and structure add-ons. Did NetEase provide?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I would say that's
Easy.
the first one. I'm like, yes, like that's feel good about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The clock towers. Finally.
Cloaking towers. I mean, name your corp add-on, and then T4 we call them T4, but they're really Citadel 1s and not Corporation Outpost
The
3s.
cap structure too.
Yeah.
Cap structures. With the T4s, they incorporated more energy points, as well as Corporation Tech allows us to increase energy points for SOV systems. So, like, they really provided when it came to that type of stuff. So, yes, they did well on that one. I very much enjoy that. That is good for corporations. Here's another one. Here's the next one. Skill chips that allow players to fly higher tiers of ships. Did NetEase provide?
What?
I don't think we actually got that yet. You're talking about the new player help them get into like new battleship skills they promised, right?
Right.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
that's
so-
a no. Yeah. That's a no.
They did not. They did not do this for whatever reason. So, if I recall their conversation correctly, it was supposed to be like some sort of skill chip or like a battleship trainer ship that was going to be a lower tier level, or maybe Alpha could fly it or something like that. So we never did see those. They did not provide on that. And then here's this one. Did faction war games come back?
Dead as fuck.
That's a joke.
Yes and no.
Those are your best questions.
Nobody
so far.
plays it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a gotcha.
Well,
That was a
the problem
gotcha
is
question.
nobody can answer that question. We don't know.
Yeah. Back from where?
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
Nobody plays it, so we don't.
That's
We haven't seen it.
Still
Yeah.
dead. Like it's buried like
Okay.
down deep.
Yeah, they're still queuing as we speak. Yeah. All right, next one. New Yangzheng ship. Did NetEase provide?
Do we count the
Yes.
sub rewards? The Logi ship they gave us? I mean, 'cause-
Yep.
Yeah.
They did.
The one you have to spend
Yeah.
a shit ton of Omega Duo to get.
Yeah,
Yep,
you
that's a
only
free
had to
reward.
buy what?
Days.
It's acquired by purchasing Duo Omega in amounts of days, and you get that reward after 1,400 days or something like that.
Yeah. That's
I
kind of
Remember when that
ridiculous.
ship came out? I remember that ship came out, and like the next day we saw a kill mill of it. So
Yep. It's a
I see.
ridiculous, useless ship.
yeah, and you can get it in gold too. So
Mhm.
all right, and then here's the final one: ship naming. Did NetEase provide?
I
No.
wonder.
But they changed the name. But they changed the
Can we-
name of our hangars for no fucking reason.
Can we phone it?
Right.
Or like I don't.
Phone a friend. You're just not sure.
We've
I don't know.
we've been asking for ship naming for a long time, and they did say in their Skype call that ship naming was going to be coming in the April patch, and we did not and have not seen it yet. So at the time when they did tell us that we were going to see ship naming, they said it was about 50% complete. I don't know how you could put a percentage completion on a feature like that. 50% of the code written, or I don't know, but
No, you
I
look at it as
promise you that.
specifically they said it was 50%.
I
yeah.
promise you that 50%
on the
won't
way
be
to
any.
approval.
It won't be any intuitive metric they've come up with to come up with that 50%.
Yeah, no, it's
So-
someone putting on a board like 5 boxes or 6 boxes or something and saying, well, none of these things have anything to do with whether or not we can implement ship naming, but all these 6 boxes have to be done and completed with whatever tasks are inside of them in order for us to turn it on. So we've done 3 of the 6 boxes, therefore we're 50% of the way there.
Yeah. So
Like honestly,
that was
how many of these are useful? Like, it's funny. Like, added so much stuff, but
Cobalt
yeah,
Edge is extremely
really-
useful. I don't know. Cobalt Edge is extremely useful.
yeah,
Cobalt Edge is one of the
Cobalt Edge,
greatest
Cloak
additions to this
Tower,
game ever. No local.
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
But
So it definitely changes some aspects of the game for what people are comfortable with versus not, and what benefits others, like hunters,
Yeah.
hunter and prey type scenarios. So You know, there's all that with Cobalt Edge. You know, and this was just the Skype call from last year, as to things that they would say that they were going to do during this. And I would say 80% plus of the stuff that they mentioned in the Skype call, they actually did release, upon other stuff that they didn't say that they were going to release that we ended up getting. So, you know, like additional soft spots, or heck, Cobalt Edge wasn't even mentioned in that call, and we ended up getting that.
Right.
You know, amongst other things, supers, you know, and heck, even VACs, those versatile assault ships. Like, I don't know if it was the lack of content creator questions. Like, we weren't thinking about that stuff. You know, we were thinking about stuff that would impact us the day of the Skype call. Like, what would be most impactful to us right now? Oh, are we going to get an API? Are we going to get more Citadel energy? Like, you know, type of questions. We could have asked them if supers were coming. They probably would have said yes or no. I don't know. They could have, but it's just one of those things that the content creators and the mods at the time didn't think about asking them. And this year we did not get, I guess, the question of a whether or not a Skype call can happen again this year. It's just nothing's been talked about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's still relatively early in the month, so
It is.
maybe
It is.
So, I mean, I'll be one of the first to ping Cartley and say, hey, can we get a Skype call like we did last year, and maybe get some insight as to what's going on for 2024 and Eve Echoes? That'd be great. And in fact, after this episode, I'm gonna do that, and maybe we will see something, maybe we won't, I don't know. So
sounds good.
That will be cool. So yeah, that was some useful insight as to what we saw during this last year that NetEase said that they were going to do versus not. So a majority of it was implemented. I'm happy to see that. And yeah, that's all I got.
Like March or something, or late February, Dara, something like that, as a Chinese New Year. And Chained, that's not what they have those calls like that with the content creators, not everybody.
Yeah.
But they do AMAs, which they did this year as well. They did a lot this year. If you really look back at it, they did a lot
Huge
this year.
year.
Yeah. All right.
People say game is dying.
I got to run, guys.
They haven't updated the Trello.
No, they haven't updated the Trello in a long time, I know.
No.
So, Taylor, you want to do the content creator shout out while we close this out?
No.
You're not down to... I could pick on OC. I mean, he hasn't done it like ever.
Is there a script? Like, do I?
You just go off the top of your head.
Go list out all the content creators that we have on our server.
Who's our sponsored content creators?
All of our sponsored content creators, which I can go through and do, because I'm just going to do it anyway. I'll cough my way through it. Muffin, obviously, is one of them. He was the one who was in our race and won. And then, of course, we've got Achieved, who is here. That was great. He was here for a little while today, too. Hale was here, and Hale's one of them. Juby's one of them as well. I'll go watch all of his content. If you don't know where all this stuff is at, it's in the hash new TAC Eden TAC content TAC creator channel right here on our station, or on our server. So Juby's posting up content all the time with fights. Hale is posting up the kind of content that Benzie never would or could or wasn't good enough to do. And then, of course, Damon Zell is the almost news that comes around every so often. So
I'm surprised he didn't put out a video this last week.
He didn't. He's probably busy. I mean,
Stuff that we've been talking about.
It's tough for him sometimes if he's busy with work and all that. Kawari's posting again, who's post Fleet Battles, but from a Logicane perspective, so that's nice. One of my favorite ones here recently was Hales with the mining ASMR video. That was fun to just pull up and have playing in the background. It's great.
Cool. Yeah, and we had a full audience for a majority of the show. Literally 50 out of 50
We did.
people could not join the podcast